Sure.
Good evening.
Oh, there we go, we're up.
Yeah, we're up.
Good. What do you want me to do with this?
Actually, make sure you got three. Got one. All right, so those all get handed out.
Okay, so these go up
Those
to
get handed
everybody.
out.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Smith. I'm the vice chair of the commission, and a quorum being present, this meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation shall come to order. This commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority of the commission is derived from the municipal code of the city of Annapolis, chapter 21, section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve and promote the preservation and appreciation of historic sites, structures, and districts. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in chapter 21, section 8.06. The HPC operates pursuant to the State of Maryland 1977 Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed between or amongst commissioners outside of the public hearing to determine the disposition of the application. We'll have a roll call. Will Scott? Here. Bill Williams? Here. Kim Finch? Brendan, I forgot your last name already. Greeley. Brendan Greeley? Here. Our newest member of the commission, so thank you for joining us. Kim Golder and Leslie Xavier are not present at the moment. We also have with us this evening John Tower, our Chief of Historic Preservation, and Kim Consoli, our recorder, who records our meetings and keeps us on track. So now for announcements. John, do you have any announcements for us?
In a first today, I had a wife call in a stop work order on a husband.
That sounds familiar.
So anyway, never a dull moment. No, I think we should get on with other business.
Excuse me, please.
Yes.
John, could you perhaps introduce the gentleman next to you?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Chris Jakubiak, the Director of Planning and Zoning.
Welcome, Chris. We welcome Leslie Xavier to the stand. We'll move on to approval of draft minutes. We have the draft minutes from February 13th. It's not in the drive. Did we get those?
I distributed those.
Oh, they were distributed separately? Okay. Did anybody get a chance to review them? Can we just defer that action to the next meeting? Okay. And the next step on our agenda is new violations and status of active violations. John, do you have anything for us?
We are mostly working on sidewalk obstructions at this point. They come up and just have to deal with them. Sometimes they're more easily solved than at other times. Currently, one of the new arrivals is a propane cylinder storage tank on Cornhill Street.
Gotta be kidding.
I am. You can't hear me? Okay. Yeah. Would you like me to repeat that?
I heard it.
Okay.
Is that all you have, John? For that
Yes.
section?
Right. Right. Nothing. I would like to see the city's Christmas lights come down. Daylight savings time is now in effect, but it's a minor issue, and I know they will come down.
It was quite nice walking here in sunlight with daylight savings. I preferred that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, John. The consent docket is the next item on the agenda, and I don't believe we have any applications that qualify for the consent docket, so we'll just move right into new business. So with that, we have multiple applications here today, and we traditionally are able to have everyone swear in mass together right now. So anybody who has an anticipation of testifying tonight, if they could stand and respond to my oath the oath I'm going to tell you by saying I do. So and that includes any applicants, staff, consultants, professionals, and any member of the general public seeking to enter into the record their comments regarding any of the applications which will be heard at this hearing. If you intend to testify, please rise and raise your right hand. Do you affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimonies given and the statements you shall make are true to the best of your information, knowledge, and belief? Thank you. You may be seated. With that, we can move into our first application and have a presentation from our applicant representing 10 Church Circle. And just as a reminder to anybody who's going to speak today, to go ahead and press the button on the microphone so that the light lights up. That means that they can hear you on the live stream.
Good evening. My name is Leo Wilson. I'm with Hammond Wilson Architects, and I'm here on behalf of my clients for 10 Church Circle. I think it's actually 1014 Church Circle. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I'll put the mic a little closer and see if we do better. The application is, I think, fairly straightforward. What we'd like to do is take the existing structure and paint it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the presentation. I believe it's customary for the staff report to be read in first. Is that true?
Not read aloud. I can read it.
Okay.
It would be, an exciting bedtime story.
Well, I think we can cut to the chase then if you're not going to read it. And we'd like to paint it, and John has concerns about it. And so we're here to talk about why we think it's a good idea in hopes that we can persuade you that it is. So if it's okay, I'd like to hand out some supplemental information. We got the staff report last night, and so we wanted to see if we could provide some additional information. I'd like to hand it to the commissioners, if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
While I would like to see the additional information, it does look like it's substantial. And as a rule, I don't review something that substantial here and then act on it. So if the applicant really wants wants me to pay close attention to that much material, it might be good to already think about whether we should continue this hearing.
So,
I'm looking for you to jump in.
So it's basically a series of photographs, which I'm going to click through on the screen. So it's really there's nothing to read. It's really just imagery that I think supports our position. So
Good. That's what I was hoping you would say.
Is it in addition to the ones that were already provided to John?
That's correct. I think there were some that were provided, and we weren't sure if they made it into the city system or not. So we brought those. They may be redundant, and then there were a few more.
Okay.
So, Leo, these are the precedent imagery, painted brick and historic district. Is that it, or something else? I've got it.
Okay, great. Just weren't sure.
Thank you. I'm better with pictures anyway.
So are you starting with the first one?
Yeah, we'll run quickly through these, and then we'll get to the additional info. So I'll just run through the application so that the public can see it if they haven't had a chance to. And basically, the building we're talking about is 1014 Church Circle. This is an aerial image of what we have today. It was, for the longest time, a bank building. Was recently purchased by a private entity, and now it's the home for SmartLink and also the Kelly Investment Group. So good news is the building is occupied, and it's nice to have another building downtown with a nice company in it. It's one of the biggest companies in the city right now. Street view, you can see how the building kind of is a prominent component of the Church Circle area. Let's go through these quick, Chris. Other images of it as it sits now, the sign's down, of course, because it's occupied. We took these a little while ago, but they were in your package. Here we go down the side street, and there's the back of it. So this is how the section at the street works at Church Circle, and I know you're all familiar with this, where the lower level is actually a covered walkway, and the upper level is pushed forward to the property line. And so oddly enough, the sidewalk is only a few feet wide there as a public way, but there's an easement below the building to support the walkway that's there now. All of that stays. Yeah, so this is where we are, and this is what we were hoping to do. The idea here was to take this structure, and if we go back to the slide just before, Chris, for me, please. The challenge we have is that the way the building is skinned and fenestrated creates some challenges because it's such a big building, and we've got these horizontal stripes that are the precast concrete elements that separate the first floor from the second and then cap the second floor before we get to the mansard roof, which is in disrepair. The brick has got some damage, and what you can't see here is that the mortar is actually a rose color, which I think you guys know. So the idea was to try and take away this kind of striated imagery that you see and go to a single statement with one color for the building and another color for the components that are either the fenestration with the windows and doors or the metal roof, to go to a darker color there. So go to the slide, Chris. So this is what we proposed for you. Yeah, it's a significant change, but let's go through the rest of the story and then we can talk about it. Rest of the images. So again, what we have today, what we're proposing, we'll have a few of these for you here. This was all part of the package. Great, thank you.
I think that's the end of it. I'm not going to go through the paint.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Go to the supplemental information if that works for you.
Yeah, great. So we've provided some information we thought added a little bit to the reasoning behind the decision to paint. For us, you know, again, we feel like the thing is a pretty big challenge. It's such a big building, and the stripes are really problematic for us. So I thought it was interesting in the staff report, they categorized the building as a brutalist piece of architecture, which was a style in the early 70s, late 60s. So, you know, we don't see much of it. So we pulled up Wikipedia and some other places where we could see, like, well, what does everybody really think that is? And so brutalism, heavy appearance, lack of ornamentation, generally concrete, although there are some examples that are brick as we've shown here, monochromatic palette, which we do not have, and small windows, which again, we do not have. That doesn't mean it's not a brutal piece of architecture, but it's kind of a peripheral piece of that. It's not like it's a demonstration of a high-level brutalist component. So you can go through the next one here. So then we went around and looked at some of the context around the building, and you know, we can keep going through these, trying to get a sense of, well, what's the right choice here? What's the right answer? And keep going. So this is a view from the corner where our building sits to what I see from that location. And of course, we've got Church Circle, which we'll talk about a little later. A Tudor structure, interestingly enough to me, is that building was originally a cedar shingle building with dark brown shingles on it. And at some point, they changed it to the stucco, probably because of the condition of the building. It's easier to just coat it with stucco rather than try and repair the wall. And then beyond that, you'll see another painted brick building with with the gray and then the white frames for the windows. Next. A little broader context, of course, you'll see the buildings, you know, you've got the painted one, the stucco one, you've got the historic structures off to the left, which are brick and again, the black roofs. Just a couple of other views. This is, you know, kind of looking at the church as we come into town. And, you know, southwest, you can see, again, the brick building. And then Ford Church, that's actually the back of Ford Church on the right side. And that's a stucco building that's painted white as well. So, and then, you know, we'll just move around the circle. You can see there's an abundance of architectural styles here from different periods, looking around the circle from below the walkway. So just a little background about what we have there. And then you can see our building. To me, our building it kind of says like more suburban office park with a mansard roof on it rather than a brutalist thing. It's not big enough to be kind of a statement building. It's just kind of a two-story structure with the mansard applied. Keep going. So we went back and looked at what was there before, and before they took that building down, and I think it was in 1959, maybe 58, they took it down. And sure enough, the structure that was there prior to the bank building was a two-story building with smaller openings for the windows, but interestingly enough, was white. So, you know, we talk about whether these buildings are significant or not significant in terms of the review category that they fall into, as they're contributing or not. And I'd argue our building is one of the less contributing ones to the character of the circle. And when we look back at what was there, you know, the white was successful, and in my opinion, far more so than what we see there today. So what does all that mean? Well, let's keep going. So, you know, we studied it. Now, we received John's comments, and, you know, I mean, I've been here plenty of times, and sometimes when I get the comments, I'm like, wow, that's kind of, you know, that's not really what I wanted to hear. I wanted to get support for it. So we think about, well, what does that mean? How are we going to get through this? And, you know, I think John's concern, and he can speak when he's ready to do so, about his concern is that, you know, the white is almost, you know, it's almost too stark. It's kind of a big change, and it's worked in other places, but perhaps this isn't the place. So that's all right. Yeah. So we kind of stepped back a little bit, and we looked at some of the other buildings in the historic district, and there are white ones, like the hotel was recently painted white. But we thought, well, maybe we'll look around and see what else is available. And we thought, well, maybe it's a little too harsh, too stark of a change, and something that unified the elevations of the building to more of a single skin with the openings and the roof as another color would simplify the way the building appears and make it more background and less kind of this unusual piece. So we looked at a you know, less, you know, a softer color, more of a beigey color, and we thought, wow, this could work. So let's go. So again, what we have today, what we were initially proposing, what we think might be more acceptable to the commission is a softer color. And then we did a comparison of the two, and, you know, the white is on the right, and that's more just like a you know, a pretty straight stream white. And then we went to the color on the left, and is it Wish, Chris? Is that what it says? Yeah, Wish. So somewhat apropos. So let's keep going. Yeah, okay. Let's go to the other images. I'd like to just run through those real quick since I just handed them out to the commission. So, no, you could have made the case that I should have shown these first, because these are what we looked at when we were making the decision about how we would respond to the comments that we received from John. But, you know, here we see brick buildings that have been painted. Of course, we know the hotel, you know, I believe the hotel looks a good bit better in the white than it did in the brick. It's not the same context, but I think it was an improvement. But these are the ones that started to look a little bit nicer to me, particularly the one on the left where, it's a little softer color. It's not so stark. I mean, the one on the left at 200 is a nice building too, but the one on the right seems to work pretty well. And then we've got other buildings on Main Street where we see different colors applied. You've got all of these buildings are kind of in different places, but it seemed as if the softer colors started to be a little bit more, they settled into the context more gracefully than the stark white ones. So even here, if we go back for 1 second, Chris, and we can look at the old, I think it was the teachers union down at the end, and then the bank on the left side, that's still a pretty bright structure, and it is noticeable when you walk down the street. But everything from, Seabags down to that point, even the blue building, all start to develop kind of a character that's a little less abrupt, let's say. So, and then the rest of these images are just other buildings along the street face in the vicinity of the project. And again, what I'm seeing here is that after I saw the comment, I'm like, well, maybe there's a point to be made for softening the color a touch. So, great. So, where does that leave us? Well, as we try to do when we come to see you all, we try to figure out what can we do to find, a place where we could all move forward and feel like we did the right thing. And so, as I said, I'm not happy to hear that, I wasn't right the first time, but I kind of feel like the second one might be actually better. And so my hope is that you would review it in the same way. I think doing nothing is a really bad choice here. We've got a new owner. They're committed to occupying the building. They're trying to create a sense of place for themselves and change the character of that building from what was the old bank and move away from this kind of suburban looking, two-story strip mall thing and create a single vision or a single kind of envelope that the building is enclosed within. And so the simplicity of the buff color with the black roof and the black windows seems to me like a much better kind of place to be than where we are today with it. So respectfully request approval of the application with that adjustment. And with that, I'll turn it over to y'all and you can tell us what your thinking is.
Thank you, Leo. I appreciate your comments. I just want to go ahead and enter into the record the supplement that was given to the commissioners and what's shown on the screen, along with all the other documents that were provided originally. So before we do the staff report, do any of the commissioners have any clarifying questions? Will?
Did you consider any other colors besides the two you presented to us?
Several. Yeah.
And why did you choose not to share them with us?
Well, we looked at some reds in an attempt to say, well, let's make it look more like it's all the same brick as what's there today. And it just didn't take us to where I thought we wanted to be. Like it felt like now it was a big red building instead of a red building with stripes on it. And so,
Okay.
And then we looked at a darker color, like a darker gray almost, and that seemed imposing to me. So that's why I went to the white first, was to make it feel lighter. But, I can see that, that presents some challenges too. So the color we landed on felt like it was a nice way to kind of like not get to the reds, the greens, which we see downtown on some of the other buildings, or anything that would jump out more like some of the blues we saw. I didn't really think that was appropriate for this building because of its size. So the beige seemed like the best way for us to go. That's why we landed on it. But yeah, we looked at a few.
If it's appropriate at some point during our discussion, I happen to have a photograph of something that, this is completely serendipitous, I think might be a better solution.
Okay, thank you, Will. I will, just as a general comment for you, but also for any applicants, that it is helpful when you have other scenarios you've considered to bring those with us and help us follow the same path you did to come to the conclusion you did. So, like I said, it's not specific to you. That's a generic comment.
Understood.
Go ahead,
That's a good
Brendan.
point.
I just have a question. Looking at the building in the state it's in now, it seems like the most glaring problem is like lack of 30-year maintenance on the concrete. Is is it possible to clean that? Is that something that you had looked into, sort of just whitening or staining or whatever it is that you would do to clean the water damage that's off the front of the concrete? Is the painting a solution for that, or is there some way to actually just clean it as well?
Well, we think we could certainly get it better than it is today. We looked at it and we did a little section. We took a shot at cleaning it. It doesn't come up to the crisp, precast that, like we see at the garage, those types of things where it has a nice, bright, crisp appearance. I mean, I think a lot of it has been coated with some type of parging, particularly on the flat surfaces to provide slope. So we can't see a scenario where we can take care of the kind of the deteriorated nature or the lack of maintenance that we see on the concrete without coating it with something.
Okay, so just you can't get there with cleaning, and hence the painting.
Yeah, we really can't. We could make it better, but it wouldn't be good.
Thank you, Brendan. Do we have any other clarifying questions? Bill?
Leo, when you were doing the color schemes, you stuck, looks like fairly much to a monochromatic tone with just white, with the white bands. You have two partially different tints of gray with the next set. Is there any other variation so we can get more activity in the building? Because basically it's a big block, and you see this block from the entire circle. When you come down Northwest, you look across the front of the church, and the building's right behind it.
Yeah, so it's a good question. There really weren't breaks in materials that helped to support the idea of maybe trying to do some different color around the windows or changing one component to one color and another component to another, just because it would be arbitrary. Like you'd paint like, oh, some of the brick is a base, let's say, and I thought about that, and then a middle and a top, and trying to get some changes there. It's just because it's the difficulty with doing that is there's so little skin, there's just like these bands of building, and so all of a sudden, like it didn't seem like you were solving the problem by going to a more complicated color scheme. And so, again, I probably could have shown you some images of that, but to me, none of those really worked very well. And we did look at the base, middle, top kind of component, and it just seemed like it was less than successful. And we also saw that when we went to look at the context in the area, there were very few buildings that did that, where there were more than one color of the brick being coated with something. It's unusual to see that. There probably are a few, but we didn't find any.
Yeah, but I'm specifically referring to you decided to color all the precast.
And and the brick too.
And the brick, but it came out pretty much to one single color.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
So we are taking a building that has some delineation of its elements and turning it into a block.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it. I mean, we felt like the kind of, go to the one from the end, anything that tried to do the precast as a different color from the brick looked kind of like what we have now. Now, I'm not saying we couldn't investigate that more, but it still presented these horizontal stripes that there's no precedent for downtown. There just isn't. I can't find it.
Well, there's
I'm happy
no
to look for
precedent
one.
for this building downtown. This is the
No,
only one that
exactly.
covers the
Like it's the
sidewalk.
hardest one to do, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what to do with it. I would really like to, start over, but that's not an option.
I don't know, start over is always an option.
Yeah, I don't know if my owner has the appetite for that undertaking.
But just what I'm seeing, at least with the white especially, the gray is better, to my opinion. But especially with the white, it's competing with all the historic elements on the church, and it is, or on this circle, and it is sort of distracting. And as brick, it kind of recedes a little bit. It's still in your face as a building, being right on the street and everything, but, and it's just, it seems like it needs more. And I don't know what it would be. It's a hard building.
Yeah,
It's definitely a challenge.
On that, we agree.
Brendan, do you have another comment?
I think we discussed this on ourselves.
Okay.
All right, John, go. Would you present the staff report, please?
So I reviewed this and I didn't recommend approval, as you know. Just want to make sure everyone knows, I've made it a policy starting right now that anytime I do not recommend approval, I call and let the applicant know. Really would have been better, I think, if we had started working on it together before. I also want to point out, this is not the first attempt at trying to do something with this building. You know, you've seen it as a pre-application and a sort of early 20th century commercial industrial design, which really looked good. But didn't fit the context of the neighborhood. The immediate neighborhood here is of some of the most significant buildings within our historic district, the Maryland Inn, the courthouse, St. Anne's, but then the vernacular buildings, the Annapolis Bank and Trust building, and then of course we have Reynolds, which is a National Historic Landmark, and the Farmers National Bank. You can go around the circle, except for a couple of exceptions. They're all brick. So brick is really the unifying theme of Church Circle. As you go around the circle, you pass buildings of brick in different patterns, different mortars, and so on. I am very familiar with the pink mortar at this building because I helped the mason figure out how to create pink mortar to fill in the ATMs. And I also want to say that I think that the brick currently diminishes the mass of this building. It's a big building. It goes from street to street, and it looms over the circle, but it doesn't feel that way. I also want to say that once it is painted, we have no control over the colors that follow. So as I said to Chris today, it could be painted bright orange in the future. It wouldn't be appropriate, but it could be. I know that Hammond Wilson is trying to do something to improve the appearance of the building. This is not the first attempt. It's difficult. But I think if the cast concrete is painted to match the brick and the brick is obscured, then the context within the immediate neighborhood is removed. What I assumed you might propose was just painting the lintels, but I wasn't sure. But I know it's difficult, and I don't want to cast any negativity on the occupancy. It's great to have a business in that space, and I know that for the last year and a half, you've been looking at this. So this is another attempt. I just don't know that it's successful within the context of this very important historic streetscape.
Thank you, John. So next is, I want to ask my commissioners who did a site inspection. I suspect everyone did, since it's hard to get here without going by the site. And then, so the next step is opening public testimony. Is there any member of the public who wishes to testify either for or against this application tonight? No takers, so I will close public testimony and we'll move on to deliberations by the commission. And while we do this, I want to recognize that Kim Golder is here with us as well.
No questions at this time. I would ask for a 10-minute.
I'm sorry.
All right, so
Thank you.
for deliberations, commissioners, Kim, you want to start us off?
Yes. I personally feel that right now, the only thing that ties that building in with the historic district is the fact that it has brick exterior on it. That is the single element that was about to the historic characteristics. I'm reading here on characteristics of Annapolis streetscapes, and it says, each building contributes to the closely scaled urban street scheme, with St. Anne's Church and the State House serving as visual and cultural focal points. The whole is completed by the building facades which define the street and by the open space which provide relief to the focused eye and enhance the 18th century town form. We have allowed painting of other buildings. We discourage it strongly, historically. It has sometimes, spring break, I guess. Anyway, we have discouraged it in the past. We've been forced in some ways sometimes to allow painted buildings because the buildings were painted and then relief was requested for it. But I could not support the painting that's being suggested here on that building, in that location, on that significant visual focus point in the city of Annapolis, next to such significant structures as Reynolds Tavern and St. Anne's. And on the other side, the State House.
Thank you, Kim. Will?
I think I agree with the sense of Kim's remarks. And the white just seems like a spotlight or a strobe light flashing on State Circle. I couldn't support that either. The material that I referred to are some shots that I have on my cell phone, just as I say, serendipitously, of Oaxaca, Mexico, where my wife and I just spent a week. And I think if you know Spanish colonial architecture at all, you know that they have a wide variety of stucco finishes that they use in a fairly wide variety of earth tones. There were lots of reds, pinks, sort of, in between pink and red colors that seemed to be much more appropriate and would solve most of your problems if we were to allow a stucco finish that had color in it, which I think we would, wouldn't we, John?
It's been done before.
Yeah. So anyway, to sum up, I can't support the proposal that's before us, but I can see that there are other possible solutions that might allow the building to be recognizable and distinct and yet blend in with the circle.
Thank you, Will. Leslie, do you have some comments?
So, I've been all over the world, and there are so many examples of contemporary architecture fitting in with traditional historic structures. And I can see the brickwork on this building is really unique and very beautiful. But it's kind of like a beautiful lady with a dirty face. So, there must be some more creative way to achieve what you want to in a cost-effective manner that allows, both, that satisfies both our desire to have this fit within the architectural atmosphere that's here, and to stand out without being like really brazen. So, I know that there's many finishes, such as lime wash or softer finishes, that mimic or give credence to the architecture of Annapolis without, being so harsh. So while I don't agree with the scheme that's right here and now, I think that you have an opportunity, and a huge opportunity. I love the brickwork on this building. Brick masons, the average age of a brick mason in this day and age is, I think they said 56. So they're not many. So I value contemporary architecture, but at some point, we need to make this kind of fit in. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Kim, do you have any other comments?
No, other than I would not be able to support it either. I do feel that what is being offered sticks out.
Mike.
Sorry. I feel that what's being offered sticks out significantly, and I wouldn't be able to support it at this time. I do believe that it should blend better in using some of the other options. That's just such a stark contrast. To take your reference about the face, is like having a boiler on a beautiful face, as you stated, because it just sticks out so much. So I would definitely support some other options that would allow it to blend and not appear to be the most important girl on the street.
Thank you, Kim. Brendan, do you have something you'd like to?
So I empathize with the challenge of that building, but I agree with the sense that the saving grace of it as it is right now is that it has brick, and the brick becomes at least a part of the neighborhood with St. Anne's there. I also wonder, you go to the trouble of showing the brutalist architecture and defining it as monochromatic. And if we were to take brutalist on a scale from, Shiplap House on the non-brutalist end to the Boston City Hall on the brutalist end, turning that building monochromatic actually nudges it more brutalist. And it's the differentiation in the current design that sort of at least makes it passable, though, as we all agree, unsatisfactorily so, in the current neighborhood. Is there any way, did you look into figuring out some kind of wash, some kind of paint, so that the concrete, the dirty concrete, which seems to be the real problem, is painted? Is there a way to make that work? Is that something you looked into? I'm sorry, are we allowed to ask questions at this point?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So, I think there is. I think there's a way to, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I'm hearing kind of a theme here, which is, again, it's not what I want to hear, but I understand it. It's, for the commission, and what I'm hearing is that, we understand the problem, we understand the desire to change the character of this building in some way so that it doesn't look like it does today. The lighter colors are, well, you understand why we would want to do it, and there's other buildings that do it. In this case, you're not sure that it is an improvement that's worth the risk. It could be like, we'd see it and say, oh gosh, it's lousy. So I think, maybe what we ought to be talking about is, okay, well, let's stick with the brick. Let's figure out what we can do with the severely discolored and spalling precast white elements here, and see if we can do something with that. And so to me, what that is, well, what are your options? You could try and parge it again and get it to the white color it was at one point, or the cream color. I don't think that's a great solution myself, because it's like, okay, you just repaired an ugly building. Or maybe there's an opportunity to look at some other colors for that either, maybe pick up the brick potentially. Maybe they go to a different color that, is a little more successful and less of a contrast between the brick and these white stripes. I think, what I heard from John, or what I read from the report, was that, we don't have a challenge with with painting the mansard and the windows, and those can be done administratively. So that's something we could take care of. But I'm wondering if I decide to bring back to you some options about how we might work on the precast, or maybe some other pieces as well. Do I have to withdraw this application for fear of it being denied and then I can't come back with a paint scheme again? Or am I permitted to come back with some options that we could all look at and decide if we've got something better?
My understanding is that if you were going to substantially change it based on what you're hearing tonight, is that withdrawal would be the best option for that.
Okay, understood.
So we do have a couple more commissioners who might want to comment as well. So
Sure.
before you jump to that conclusion,
Understood.
do you have any other comments, Brendan? Thank you. Bill, do you have any other comments?
We've been talking about the brick the whole time because that's basically what the circle is. It's brick. Always has been. The precast, a cleaning, a painting, I could see the precast being painted if necessary to bring it back. The roof has not really been talked about. You mentioned it just a minute ago. But the roof, right now, the roof is adequate at best. It needs a refreshing. Basically, the house needs a new hat. And that could liven up that building and really help you make that building a little more of a focal point on that circle for your client. It's just the way I see it. And I don't think there is anything that you'd be doing there that can't be reversed in the future. When we touch the brick, whether it's with a wash or with paint, that's done. The brick has changed. We're not bringing it back. And one other thing that hasn't been mentioned is particularly visible in the walk area down below is the amount of wear that lower area brick gets. So if it is painted, that's going to be a constant maintenance just to keep it from looking all scarred up all the time. Between people using bicycles and skateboards and scooters and everything else and using those bottom sections as a ramp to do kicks off of, it could be more trouble than it's worth. Just a thought.
Thanks, Bill. Brendan?
Just briefly, as somebody who in fact skateboarded off of that building as a child, that does seem to have a wear problem there. I knew it was you. I can name others.
Thank you, Brendan. So a couple thoughts I had, and I did want to ask a question about, which may not end up being relevant, but if you paint both the brick and the concrete, how does that wear over time? Is it consistent between those two materials or not?
My guess is that we'd have an aging process that would be not the same on the precast as it is on the brick. So it would be, as was described, a maintenance issue that we'd have to deal with.
Okay,
Yeah.
I figured as much. I just didn't know.
I think you're right.
It would be a maintenance issue, right? That's kind of
Agreed.
the concern. So the other comments I had was just reinforcing the way that the paint removes the scale that's provided by the concrete, of breaking it up. I mean, that's on page 26 of the guidelines. It's a very consistent thing in Annapolis to clearly delineate the levels of the house to the levels of the structure at a human scale. And that I feel like those concrete lentils do that. And if I had been approving this building the first time with the brick and the precast concrete, I would have accepted the precast concrete because of that reason. The lime wash, it was another, you even mentioned that in your presentation. I know you've done that in other properties, I'm sure. It would be nice to see like a picture of that if that was like on the table, but it sounds like that might not be on the table for tonight. Obviously you can't just create it out of nothing right now, but that would be helpful whenever you're dealing with masonry.
Is it okay if I ask a question?
Sure.
Or you guys, I'll follow your lead.
Go ahead, you can ask a question. I'm just going to summarize here at the end.
Okay. So I'm wondering if, the plan for us is going to be to withdraw this so that you don't vote, so that we can come back and talk more about what might be a better solution for us. And I'll work with John and my team and see if we can come back to you with something that, maybe strikes a better tone for you, for the commission, and hopefully for my owner as well. The roof piece is in terrible shape, and I'm just wondering, it doesn't help. It doesn't seem to me. It just makes the building taller with looks like a copper colored thing that's painted. It's not great. Is it possible that taking it off would be a better idea than trying to repair it, and maybe putting a railing on top of it and some green at the top that would soften this building a little bit? Is that something that the commission might consider if they saw it?
Have to see it.
Yeah, I think we'd have to see. Any other thoughts?
Yeah.
That's not what we've been presented with. We're being
Right, it would
offered this choice, and we're saying that it doesn't fulfill what our expectations are with regard under the guidelines. If you want to bring back additional ideas, that would be fine, but we can't entertain those tonight or give advice on those if we haven't been shown to us.
Understood. So what I'm going to propose is that we withdraw the application, and as much as my owner is ready to move forward as quickly as they can, this might be an opportune time to step back and maybe come back for a work session with some ideas we can all talk about together in an attempt to get us to an approval more expeditiously than trying again.
I think we'd be comfortable with that in general. I would like to summarize kind of where we're at and kind of some final thoughts before you officially withdraw the application. In trying to summarize, I would like to just reinforce that as far as the guidelines for the immediate neighborhood, I'm really only interested in Church Circle. The church is the second most important location in the city, and therefore we are taking a very strict look at this. If this building were in another location, the same application may have been approved potentially. But on Church Circle, everyone sees it. You can't miss it. It's right there. I will say that we're excited that the owner wants to invest in the building and wants to invest in the city. We're in support of that. And I do want to reiterate the ability to, if you're just painting the mansard or the windows, that would be a potential administrative if that were the only part of the application. But as a whole, if you are doing more than that, it probably does still need to come to a commission, to the commission for approval. Just to reiterate about the scale that we talked about, the concrete providing scale for the building, to keep the building from looming over Church Circle. So that was the summary I wanted to provide. Leo, if you want to go next.
Well, as always, thank you for the time and the consideration. And at this point, we're going to respectfully withdraw the application, and we'll come see you again when we have an approach we think we might do better with.
Thank you, Leo.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, which is for Church Circle.
Good, good. No, it's okay. Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah.
All right, please go ahead for 4 Church Circle.
Okay, we're looking to make sure we're connected to the screen. There we are. Great. So let's do this again. See how we do.
Could you introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So my name's Leo Wilson with Hammond Wilson Architects. That's Andrew Fishback on my far side. Clint and Cody are the owners of this structure today, and Phil Dales is their legal representative. You may recall that we were here not long ago to get approval for this project for the adaptive reuse of what was in its most recent iteration the real estate offices, and our new plan is for the boutique hotel with restaurant elements on the first floor and also on the lower level. And all of that was approved at our previous visit with y'all. And the only place we tripped was
Leo, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
And say that at a pre-application, there's no approvals or denials.
It was fully approved. It wasn't a pre-app. The building is approved as it is today.
Oh, as it is today.
I mean, as what you see there, the only piece that was in question was the rooftop deck.
That's correct.
Okay.
There's a new stairway that had to be designed according to fire code, and the rooftop deck was that and the rooftop deck were removed from the previous application.
Thank you for that clarification, John.
So we're here tonight just to work through that last piece of this in hopes that it's pretty straightforward. The imagery is largely unchanged, and I'll let Andrew just kind of click through these real quick. I can use this? Okay. Great. So what we've got here is the rooftop deck as it was originally submitted with a single stair that went off of the small component that, if you look at the first image, is all the way off to the right. And we'll show a better picture of it. It's easiest to see here the changes that were made. The stair that was in place was slightly reconfigured, and a second stair was added to provide 2 means of egress off of this rooftop deck. That's the sum total of the adjustments to the application. So the red outline over the portion that is on the left side of the screen is really where the change occurs. You can see this is from the side, and all of this is as it was presented initially and approved. None of this has changed. This is the one image where there's a change, and so I'll toggle back and forth. There's the rooftop piece as it was originally presented, and you'll see the tiny area, well, I think it's tiny, just behind the trellis element above the second floor on the left side. Can you all see where I'm toggling that on and off?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the change that you'll see from the public way. Again, it's fairly modest. There's a series of components that I don't think I need to take y'all through of the lighting that goes up there with it, and some of the just kind of more technical components of the application. I won't go through those. You have all of that. But I think really what we're here to do is to get that piece approved. This was an issue only because the building plans reviewer, Mr. Blomley, pointed out that I think you have a problem here, and sure enough, he was right. We didn't have the exits figured out as well as we'd like to because we just hadn't gone that far. So we worked with his office and Chuck Ruth, and then, of course, John, to figure out how we could do this. And the solution, again, it is fairly straightforward. It's really just going back to that plan and adding that stairway. So that's really the application as it is tonight. And if there's more questions, I could go into more detail, but that's pretty much what we're here for.
Yeah, so I guess we would have clarifying questions. So go ahead, Will.
So Leo, the little thing that kept popping up and going off, that is to help cover the new stairway? Is that what that is?
That's right. The stairway has to be enclosed.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's all it does is enclose the stairway.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Go ahead, Will. Bill, sorry.
Leo, as far as the stairs concerned, right now, your rendering is what, about 40 feet from the corner of the building?
Probably a little more,
Okay,
honestly.
we'll say 50 looking up. How does it appear further down the street? Are we going to be able to see more of it as you back away?
I don't believe so because the adjacent structure is situated such that it's kind of a V there. So if you were to move maybe 10 or 15 feet away from the circle, the only thing you'll be able to see at that point is the trellis element that's up there, which was in the prior approval. So you'd really have to kind of study it to be able to see it. And it's only for a certain distance because once you get to the face of the building, parallel to the face, you can't see it.
Yeah.
And then it's really just this little gap where you might be able to pick it up.
Okay, is there other rooftop equipment up there? I'm sure that's already been approved, though.
There's quite a bit in the back with the restaurant uses and the mechanical equipment associated with the rest of the structure, but it's all back behind this piece, so it's centered in an area that's not visible from the public way.
Okay, it's irrelevant. Okay.
It seems so to me.
Any other clarifying questions?
Well, I have one. In the plan set here, it appears as though the screening wall is larger than what's seen in the perspective here, which I do not have a problem with, but the appearance is that it is larger. If I'm reading this correctly, is this incorrect?
You do see the part of the angle to the building skewed plan, so you see from that elevation view along.
So this is the perspective, and this is as that reflects right there. Right.
Yeah, it's so far
Okay.
back that you can't see it because of how it's.
So I didn't have a problem with it. I actually thought your screening was a great idea.
Can you go back to the image from, there you are, from Northwest Street? So
Northwest Street.
I think that was the one you were just on, was what I was looking for.
Okay, I'll go back. Yeah, okay, so there's Northwest at the bottom.
Right, so that's Northwest Street on the bottom, and I'm looking at that and it doesn't seem like it's visible. Is that just because it's an architectural drawing, or is it really that not visible at all from there?
Well, you can see a very light outline, I think, above where the adjacent building is, but it's so far back, there's just like, you would never see that.
So are you saying it's like...
Yeah, so
When you
it's
zoom in on
easiest
that-
to see here I'll go back to the roof plan. If you were to look at, let me see if I can get my marker to work there. So that's your
yeah.
Northwest Street there.
Okay.
And this piece is all back here.
Yeah, so that's far enough back that angle you're not
I
going to see.
just don't think you could.
It's on the right side here.
That's what I thought, just keep scared returning.
So that's
Yeah.
Northwest Street where the light, the green light is.
Right.
That's
northwest. West is on the other side.
All right, commissioners, any other clarifying questions? All right. All right, John, would you present the staff report.
So I enjoyed reviewing this. I think it's a good design. I thought there may be call for moving the screening forward on the side of the building that's visible on West Street. But I like what you've done here. I said as much as you were walking up. And maybe screening might be something to consider at 150 South Street. Just a thought, because it takes some of that which is visually imposing out. And in this case, it's very easy to differentiate that screening from the brick. And I think as Ipe, if you're not going to do anything with it, it's going to gray. It'll last forever. I thought it was successful. It met the guidelines.
Thank you, John. Did among my commissioners, I presume most people have seen this site. Did everybody do a site inspection, kind of like our previous application? It's hard to get here without seeing this site. So it's again another prominent site in our community. I'd like to open up for public testimony. Is there any member of the public who wishes to testify either for or against this application? With no takers, I'll close public testimony and open it up to deliberations by the commission. So who would like to start off on the commissions? Leslie?
So I love this building. I'm glad to see that the elements of the church, excuse me. I'm sorry. So I really appreciate the fact that the Tudor style stucco and everything was kept, and that the rooftop doesn't seem obtrusive, and it's in the right place. It's in a more commercial area where it's not going to be damaging to a residential area. So I like it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Will, did you have?
I agree.
Great. Brendan?
Looks great. I like decks. I like drinks.
Kim?
John, can you remind me of what one guidelines talks about rooftop decks?
It's D9, I believe.
It is D9, and it's the last line of D9.
So how is what's being proposed here different than past rooftop decks?
Excuse me, can we turn on your mic? Yes, thank you.
How is this plan different than past rooftop decks that we have said no to because they didn't satisfy that guideline?
Well, we've said no and we've said yes.
Well, considering that guideline, how would you explain?
My review of this had the pergola sitting back from the front of the building, and you see a portion of it, but it's not a feature that is dominant, and I thought that was important. Also, the screening removes some of that from view. Now, there's also a handrail that you can see there. That's in my staff report, but I support it. They've tried to, I believe, the design attempts to minimize the impact here. Also, I do believe if and when we get to our guidelines, that we could clarify the HPC's position on rooftop decks. And I think that it's an important thing for us to do, considering how frequently we have to review them. But I consider this a success from a number of standpoints, not only its design, but also the fact that it's set back from the front of the building and it's screened.
Okay, so it's your professional recommendation that this discouragement of rooftop decks is not appropriate with this particular.
Highly visible is the key phrase in that sentence. They're discouraged because they're highly visible.
Thank you, Kim. Do you have any other comments? All right, Bill? None for you. Well, I appreciate the comments I made, and just to reiterate for the record, the section of D9 that's particularly relevant. The roofscapes of buildings at lower elevations are visually prominent from higher elevations, and waterfront roofscapes are silhouetted from the water. Alterations that diminish or conceal these character-defining features are discouraged. Rooftop decks are highly visible and are strongly discouraged. And as John mentioned, this does not alter the character-defining nature of that building, and the applicant has done a good job to minimize the visibility of the rooftop. With that, I think we're ready for a motion. There was on the staff report, a condition that a revision to the building permit is required. John, can you explain that?
Well, this is, I don't think you've submitted for your building permit yet, or you have, for this. Right, so you'll just need to put in a minimal revision.
That's correct. Yeah, we've set it up on the drawing so that that area is not part of the building permit application currently. So we'll do a modification, a revision to that, so that this piece can be included.
Okay, so
It's still in review at the city right now.
Okay, but just to have it on the record that you agreed to that condition about having a revision to the building permit for this.
We do.
Great.
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Yeah,
Okay.
goes along with that.
Apologize, it's my first time in the big seat. Recommendation that we approve the proposal based on guidelines D1, 2, 3, 4, and 10 of the section, and D9 and the guidelines of outdoor fixtures and furnishings, with the following condition: a revision be made to the building permit as if it is required.
Can I have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain.
Thank you, Kim. So it's 6 in favor with 1 abstain. Thank you for your presentation. And again, just want to, we're glad to see investment in the city. In my relatively short time living in the historic district, this building has been underused and underutilized, and I'm excited for that to change.
Well, thank you. I think we're all excited to see something really good happen there, and appreciate your time. And on behalf of the applicants, thank you.
I'd like to make a comment also. And this is about Middleton's. I've gotten a lot of calls about how happy people are with what you've done with the roof there. Mm-hmm. And the same is true at 260 King George Street. I think it looks fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on to other business for our pre-application of the city dock, I would like to take like a 5-minute break, if that's okay with the commissioners and the presenters. If we meet back here at, well, that says 7:15 now, but it's 8:15. So in 5 minutes, if that's okay.
Mr. Wilson, before you leave, I'd like to personally thank you for the conciseness of your last presentation.
We can talk some more if you'd like. We can talk some more if you'd like.
Yeah, so everybody's parking this time.
thanks for getting back together so we can continue with our meeting and have the pre-application from the City Dock Resiliency Project. Somebody gave me the microphone, so I wanted to take it. So you guys have to listen to me for a minute. In general, I just want to reiterate that the resilience, there is nothing historic without resiliency. That fortunately the recent flooding we had did not cause any permanent damage to any of the historic fabric of the city. But we are primarily just wanted to convey that we are in support of improving the city by creating this resiliency that is necessary, and that I personally view this as an opportunity to improve the city and create a wonderful spectacle focal point for the town. And Leslie and I were just talking about how the parking lot really is not the best foot forward of the city, and how City Dock has had a lot of history and a lot of different things. And I know you guys are going to present some of that history as well to help us through this process. So we're excited to see what you have to present.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much, and we are delighted and excited to be here on behalf of Mayor Buckley, City Manager Malinoff. We have tonight our partners from the Naval Academy here, and our entire team looks forward to presenting to you, hopefully relatively quickly, and then answering all your questions. With us this evening, we have our Public Works Director, Burr Vogel, our Planning Director, who I believe you all know, Chris Jakubiak, our City Attorney, who I think is behind me, Mike Lyles, and then from our team, Zoe Johnson with the Naval Academy, Travis Ligon with Whiting Turner, Scott Reichel, Mahan Reichel, Bryce Turner at the end, BCT Design Group from Traceries, Kim, and let's see if I can pronounce this correctly, Dayleader. Perfect. Dayleader, Kim Dayleader, and our Cultural Legacy Chair and Leader, Chris Haley. So with that said,
Eileen, can I interrupt you?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I forgot to do like the opening statement about pre-applications in general. Okay. I'm sure you're aware, but I just want to make sure we're putting it in the record.
No worries.
This pre-application is an accommodation made to assist property owners and their representatives in developing their application. No comments or suggestions made here regarding this project should be considered approval or disapproval of the project itself. Do you understand and agree to these terms?
We do.
Thank you. And I also just wanted to, another point I wanted to bring up is that it is the city that is applying, and we are, so it does present a situation for our head of planning and zoning and our chief of historic preservation, where they work for the city, the applicant, and for the commission at the same time. And the commission does have an attorney here with us today, Miss Lisa Bell, will be able to help us on any, advising us on anything, the commission on anything that we need help with without creating a conflict of interest. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. There's, as Kevin just mentioned, there's a long and varied history that has precluded this application. The City Dock has evolved at critical points in history dating back to the mid-1600s. Every generation has had an opportunity to meet the changing economic and cultural needs of the city. In the 1700s, it was an international port of entry with wharfs and warehouses. Moving into the mid-1800s, you had two steam mills down on City Dock and Prince George Street. Moving into the late 1800s to the 1930s, grain mills, coal yards, oil tanks. In 1895, you see up there in the corner, an oyster packing house. Then as we come into modern time, we increase with the increased use of the auto. There was an Amoco gas station for a long period of time in the circle. And what you see right now on the screen has been there for more than 50 years, and that is a parking parking lot to serve tourists and customers alike. Tonight, we continue to transform our waterfront collectively, as we have for hundreds of years, by determining the best use at this point in time, given the extreme climate changes we're experiencing. The guiding principles from the community to the city, from us with this project: first, that we stop the immediate flooding, that we build a resilient downtown along with our partners at the Naval Academy, that we transform the sea of asphalt into an active green park, that we celebrate our very diverse and complex legacy and history, and that we unlock water access for all Annapolitans. And now is the time for action. These pictures were all taken the middle of January, less than 2 months ago. That flood was the third most significant flood event in the city's history, reaching 5'1" elevation. And again, for anybody who was downtown last week, it flooded again. So as we move forward, we're looking tonight at a site plan that meets and exceeds all of the city's plans and standards. That includes the comprehensive plan, city dock consensus plan, critical areas, site plan standards, and at the same time offers flood protection from Gate Zero all the way around to Compromise Street. We've gotten here together. I'm sure that the Historic Preservation Commission, with the exception of Brendan, who was not here last spring and fall, will recall seeing the concept plan for the city dock twice, last winter and last spring, incorporating all of the comments from Planning Commission, HPC, and Council, and coming back in September and October again with a more detailed park design, ultimately bringing the final city dock site plan to the Planning Commission last month and getting adoption last week on the 7th of March, and now we are before you, the HPC, for your review and recommendations. We had over 80 meetings this past year alone with the community, including ward-based meetings in November and December. And again, what we have heard consistently is it's time to meet the needs of all Annapolitans, and part of how we do that is with the incredible work being done by our cultural legacy team. Chris?
Thank you so much, Eileen. As the chair said today, resiliency is what our group is about today, and today within the effort that we've been overtaking for many years to impart, to honor, recognize, and respect the resiliency of those who voluntarily or involuntarily landed at Annapolis' city dock. Just a week ago, we had a meeting of our Legacy Committee, which are different members of the community who we brought together virtually and in person to talk about what legacy represents to them. And so, as you might imagine, with a diverse group of people, there were different thoughts, there were different ideas. And what we're very fortunate to have at City Dock and this reimagined vision that we have are numerous locations where that vision can be imparted, where it can be visualized. Some of the words that were used were industriousness, were resiliency, were perseverance, were strength. And for me, when I think history, I've loved history since I was a little boy. I'm that guy who would go into somebody's house, and in difference to someone who may look to see what's in the refrigerator, I would look to see where are the pictures of the people who used to live in this house? Where are the grandparents? Where are the kids? Where are the cousins? Where are the aunts and uncles? And how old did those pictures look? Because something in me said, that's the history, the legacy, the heritage of the people in whose house I now sit, I now stand. And when I think about City Dock, and when I think about what we're trying to do, it's so that those who are here as tourists, or those who are here and have lived here all their life, they can go to the City Dock of Annapolis and they will walk among the huge expanse, and not only will they see wonderful vistas, and not only will they be introduced to the water and different ways to to have their recreation and their love and their fellowship expressed, but they will see at different points historical symbols, recognitions of different aspects of our history, be they of the African American community, be they of the Jewish community, be they of the Greek community, be they of the Native American indigenous community. That's what I see. And as you look at the design up there, you see specifically about 6 different locations, which Scott will talk to you a little bit more later, where we feel that these different symbols can be incorporated, so that just like the versatility and the diverse backgrounds we all have, the diverse cultures that we all have, there should not be just one symbol that recognizes and acknowledges and identifies everyone and everyone's heritage. There should be different ones, because we are all different, and yet we have all come together to impart our vision and share this in the city dock of Annapolis. And as my uncle was so passionate about history and so passionate about legacy and so passionate about family, it was that you weren't necessarily a melting pot, you were a salad, because a salad has so many different ingredients which keep their individuality, but put together, they can make a wonderful dish. And that's what I think, with the different ideas that we've been looking at, the different ideas that our committee have put together so far, and will continue to put forth, that within this cultural journey that we're going to take, which will include a timeline, which will include text narratives, perhaps QR codes, that we will be able to impart that within this city dock vision. And with that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thanks, Chris. So this is the plan view, the latest plan that we've presented, and I show this because it really shows the extent of our entire project, which goes from 110 Compromise Street, where you see Donner Park, currently a parking lot, turned into a great green space, and then you traverse around Alex Haley Plaza, then a widened promenade up along the Dock Street parking lot, and then to the bulk of the park space, which is from Craig out to Susan Campbell Park. We'll be focusing more on that this evening, because that's where more of the furniture and materials are, but I wanted to give you a picture of the entire extent of our project. So this is an aerial view looking at the park, and in the foreground is what we're calling the active park. So that area is trees that are all in planters. There's a seating area that in the center that is wood and steel that's all movable. There are foosball tables, table tennis, and those 3 pergolas on the right are they're all like porch swings that you can sit and look out over Ego Alley. All of that is movable, so that in an event like the Singer-Songwriter Festival or the boat show, all that area can be pushed aside and stacked somewhere. I should also point out that we've put bollards at the base of Dock Street, so that the entire area from Craig out is pedestrian. Dock Street will be repaved in brick, and that becomes a pedestrian promenade. It will still allow for emergency vehicles, but the extent of that is just for access during events. But basically, the entire park is a pedestrian zone. You then step up to the lawn area. So the active park is about 1.5 feet higher than the curb level at Dock Street parking lot. Then you step up again to the lawn area. That actually is part of our resiliency plan. That is a natural wall getting us to the elevation that protects that area, so that we don't have the new flood resiliency walls everywhere. The park actually becomes the resiliency protection. There are ramps, those 2 sloped ramps that gradually get you up to the centerpiece is the fountain. You see that circular area in the center. That is an interactive fountain that'll allow kids to actually get into the fountain. And as you've heard Eileen and Chris talk about, we really want this for all Annapolitans. So this is we see this as a real draw, not only for tourists but for kids that live in Annapolis. That area is recessed, so it allows for during the boat show, they'll be able to cover over that and make it even with the rest of the park so that the whole lawn area is completely at the same level. Just beyond that is, you see the words pergola stage. That's actually 90% of the time, it's just a shaded area to sit and get out of the sun. There'll be tables and chairs there. But during events, obviously, that's where a quartet could be, speakers, actors, dancers, and they can perform both ways. So you'll be able to perform back to Susan Campbell or back to the park, depending on how big of an event it is. That is up about 18 inches from the lawn area. And then you step down beyond that to Susan Campbell, which will be at its same elevation. So Susan Campbell will actually remains at the same elevation and will get periodically inundated. So the pergola stage area actually is part of the resiliency as well. Susan Campbell, we've opened up the views. You see that there are currently trees in the center of it. We've pushed the trees to the side, and we have an expanded dock at the end for the boats to unload and load. So there's more surface area there for people to congregate. And we're using all native trees and to meet with critical areas, but that's really what we all should be doing on all our projects now. And you can see we've really increased the canopy in this area. So as we said, during the City Dock Action Committee and the consensus plan credence was let's create a place for all Annapolitans. Reflect the legacy of Annapolis, and as Chris went through, we intend to do that with historical quotes and references to the history of the place. Replace the parking lots with a world-class urban park, preserve and improve access to the water, and that really is for all children all over Annapolis to be able to get down to the water, to have access where they previously haven't. We're doing that with kayak launching and things like that. Increase tree canopy, which I just explained, and then protect the downtown from flooding, which is the whole resiliency project. And then looking at the historic guidelines, we're using hardscape materials in keeping with the historic district, vernacular, traditional masonry brick, wood and stone, street furniture that's simple in character, compatible with the style of the park. And we're studying important view sheds, which I'll take you through. We have a lot of them that I'll take you through, before and afters, where we are looking at how the view is affected by the park design. This is a materials plan, and the brick color is brick paving. The blue color is concrete pavers, so that's all the elevated area. The darker red are actually brick walls, low brick walls. The tan color is wood decking, so that's going to match the wood decking that's currently there, just marine decking. And I believe, and then stone walls, the dark blue is actually stone curbs and walls and seat walls. And here are the materials we're proposing. I've got a few of the samples in front of me. We're using a unit paver up on that, in that elevated area by the lawn. They're 6 by 12. That's a concrete unit paver. You see the wood decking, which will match the existing. The granite is a light gray granite that you see will be the stone treads of the stairs, the low seat walls, and areas of higher walls where we'll be able to do engraving for quotes and things like that. The brick paving is actually brick paving that the city recommends for all the brick paving. It's Pine Hall. It's got a blend, so you get that variation in the color. We're matching that with our Pine Hall brick walls, and the caps that we're looking at are still, we're still talking about, we'll probably do brick caps, but they may be a precast. And then you can see on the lower left, lower right, sorry, are all the materials together, the wall, the stair tread, and the paver, and then the dark gray paver. The dark gray paver is a nice contrast with the light gray granite, we think. And this is a plan, and I apologize, it's kind of hard to see, but it shows all the different furniture that we're using. And being, this is a placemaking exercise, we are using a lot of furniture that's movable, a lot of fun things I think you'll see when we go into it. The benches, the second top from the left is a wood chase lounge. They'll be out at Susan Campbell. They're also movable, albeit heavy to move. Bike racks, the foosball table in the upper right, table tennis going down on the right, the trash receptacles, which is the city standard, the umbrella and tables, those are, it's a metal umbrella with a table. The park bistro chairs, they'll be movable. Obviously, they're just tables and chairs that you'd see in any park. And then we're doing some of this wood clad seating that I was mentioning before that's all movable. And you stack those, and they're great for kids to sort of climb on and also create a lot of social interaction. And those trees that I said were in movable planters will be in that large concrete planter. And as I said, they're able to be picked up with a forklift and moved. And now I'll take you through the views, and it's sort of a walkthrough. So if you start at A on the far right by Market House, I'm going to take you far left, sorry. Right and left aren't good with me. A, B, and we'll go all the way around, and we'll end up at the base of Main Street. So this is a view from the market looking across at Alex Haley Plaza as it exists. This is the proposed. We're putting up the bollards, a low raised planter there. We actually are trying to discourage people from crossing because they currently cross all through there. We want them to cross at the crosswalks. And we're enhancing it. We're enhancing the whole dinghy dock area there. Go next. This is a view from Dock Street, looking back up to Ego Alley. You can see the hotel in the distance. This is the view with the trees coming in with the new promenade, less parking there, and the low walls stepping up to the park. This is looking down Dock Street, and this is the view with the promenade. So it'll be a new promenade there, and open up the views, and you can see all the way down to the end of Dock Street. This is further down Dock, and this is the view as we get further down, and you can see the pergolas off to the right. We also took views from the water, so this is looking back to, you can see downtown. And this is the view that you'll see. You'll see Dock Street, tree-lined Dock Street, and Susan Campbell Park there. Another view of Susan Campbell Park. And this is what it'll look like when it's opened up. You can see the Chase lounges there, sorry, and the trees. But it's a much more open area there. This is existing Susan Campbell, and this is the open view looking back to the pergola. So you can see that stage area can really play to both sides, and that steps up, and that is the resiliency, that serves as a resiliency wall there as well. This is now, I'm looking back at Susan Campbell, back to the water with my back to the city. And that's looking out there. So you can see that's really been opened up, and it's an open lawn area. This is in the middle of the parking lot at Long Dock. This is where the fountain will be. And you can see the fountain's recessed. You step up to it. It's fully accessible, however. Looking down the Ego Alley. And this is the view, a widened promenade, that steps up from the wood dock area. And then looking down the current promenade, I'm closer to the market, my back's to the market, looking down the promenade, and you'll see this is raised. So we're now raising the promenade up to the level of the current bulkhead. Okay. This is showing how we're ramping up from the street level. We're ramping up to the dock area, to the promenade level, and the stripe that you see on the sort of diagonally going on the left, that's actually this flood wall that is buoyant and pops up during a flood, and it goes behind the trees and then comes out of that low brick wall. And then we step down to the parking area. And this is looking sort of in Donner Park, looking back to the market. That's the new view. And this is where we're right at Donner Park. Chop Tank is to my right. There's the new view. You can see that, again, we have swings at Donner Park as well. And the bulkhead, and Donner Park becomes a green park space. This is looking across the street at Donner. And that's the view. It becomes a park. This is the view, current view of, I'm at the base of Main Street looking out. And you'll see, if you flip to the next one, that's the view with the park in place. And then, just to reiterate, that's sort of how I walked you through. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kim.
Hello, my name is Kim Dalyder. I'm the Director of Technical Preservation Services at EHT Traceries, and we're the preservation consultant on the project. I don't have much to say, but I just wanted to touch on all the ways that the project does comply with the Historic District Guidelines of Annapolis. The city dock preserves the urban form and enhances it with the removal of infill in the center of the parking lot that blocks view sheds. In terms of streetscape, it preserves and enhances the views from the water to Annapolis, again, with the removal of that infill. And City Dock Designs opens the view shed from Annapolis to the water by repositioning trees, and greatly enhances the overall tree canopy of the park. And then in terms of landscape and site design, all of the materials comply with your historic guidelines. As he said, there are samples here, but not only the materials, the brick in all of the sidewalks and on Dock Street will be laid in one of the 5 acceptable patterns, and the curb cuts are as minimal as possible, and the design greatly reduces the off-street parking at both sides of the dock. And then all of the street furniture, as you saw, and lighting will follow the design guidelines in compatibility, material, number, and location. I think a lot of people have mentioned that this area has seen a lot of change over the last 200, 300 years. And so I think it's important to note that we're not trying to recreate something, but we're trying to put something contemporary and compatible within the historic district. And I think that this design achieves that.
Thanks, Kim. I will. So those before and after images that Scott presented are very powerful tools to better understand the implications of this fascinating and complex project. Hi, I'm Derek Piper with WSP. I'm the project manager for the engineering design team responsible for civil site, utilities, drainage and resiliency, lighting, geotechnical, and structural engineering. We have a lot of different components on this fascinating project. This image that you see here is from the recent 3rd worst flooding event in Annapolis history that Eileen mentioned. It occurred this past January, which everyone knows. This image reinforces the need to solve this issue. As mentioned earlier, the primary rationale for this entire project is to enhance resiliency for City Dock. We absolutely need to resolve the nuisance flooding that occurs frequently and plan for future sea level rise. We know that protecting and enhancing City Dock is imperative for preserving and advancing the maritime, cultural, and legacy history of the city. This project essentially involves redeveloping an existing waterfront into a world-class public park. Next slide. let's see, do we miss one? There you go. All right. The approach to resiliency is a tiered approach for lines of defense. We have proposed a series of permanent barriers of varying height integrated into the park, located behind the existing bulkhead while allowing a waterfront promenade. Scott presented that promenade earlier in the presentation that essentially wraps around all of City Dock. Some locations will have a permanent flood barrier walls to elevation 8, generally around the pergola and stage area. Other locations will have permanent barriers constructed to elevation 4.5 and integrated into proposed planters with flip-up barriers attached to the top to provide protection to elevation 8. Other locations will have float-up barriers that deploy as flood waters rise. The float-up barriers are generally invisible during non-flooding events. The system also includes deployable barriers for protection for City Dock to elevation 8 and natural land barriers at Susan Campbell Park to elevation 4.5 and the terraced park to elevation 6.5. We have attempted to minimize the use of deployable barriers to ease the burden on city forces to deploy the system in advance of flood events. Next slide. Okay, this image presents the alignment of the proposed flood barrier system. The system will provide tidal flood protection to elevation 8, providing adequate protection for the predicted intermediate or high 2050 sea level with a 100-year storm, 100-year return period wind speed, and 100-year return period wave height. I really needed to read that into the record, so I got that right. So my apologies. The project involves implementation of that barrier system for Donner Park, also around and along Spa Creek and connecting to the U.S. Naval Academy. A future site plan submittal will be provided for the area of the proposed Maritime Welcome Center and the flood barrier system connection to a new U.S. Naval Academy flood barrier wall. Finally, the city is advancing separate projects shown here in the dark blue along Compromise Street. So again, lastly, I guess the proposed barrier system has those multiple types and we wanted to minimize the use of the, a deployable barrier system. And you can see that a lot of the permanent walls to elevation 8 are shown there, generally in the pink areas, and the deployable system is generally shown in the yellow, or the flip up and float ups and deployables in yellow. And I think that ends it. I'll turn next slide over to Bryce.
Great, thank you. It's good to see you all. I'm Bryce Turner, VCT Design Group. As our role is with master planning, it's really this group now that's starting to provide the detail that makes all the difference here at City Dock. We are anxious to submit a formal application to you and receive your feedback tonight and get this thing approved. We're beginning to get a lot of significant engineering and construction-related input. And we'll be back in front of you with more information as we get this developed, and not only with a formal application, but even as it evolves over time. So we're very excited about that, and just wanted to thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to your feedback.
Thank you. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's have some questions from the commissioners. I've got a full page of notes of questions I'd like to ask, but I'll defer to my fellow commissioner. I'd like to start. Anyone? Bill?
I personally like the trees you're putting back. It actually makes it more historic by about 250 years, so thumbs up there. One question on an operational note is, where do the buses park when they load and unload?
We actually have see where the words Dock Street.
Yes.
That is a bus lay-by. So that entire parallel area, and then you see we actually have two buses in the rendering, sort of 90 degrees from one another.
I see them. I see them. Now, the numbers you have listed on here, that is the additional height for the That's the deployable barriers that's being added to.
No, they're actually elevation heights.
Those are elevation heights?
Well, it looks like there's two, right? Like, so say on Compromise Street where there's the plus 4.5 and then the white highlighted 3.5 in parentheses. So can you just clarify what those two mean?
Yeah. If you look in the legend there, it says the numbers in blacks are the approximate finished grade elevation, and then the numbers in red parentheses is the height of the flood barrier.
So that is the flood barrier height, the addition. So
the red.
The grade is the 4.5, and then when the barrier goes up, it's another 3.5
Right,
feet.
sorry.
Okay.
Yes, you're correct.
Just, I was confused. Okay, I not historic, but deployable barriers are probably the best way to go, but I always get worried when people get involved. But yeah, that's enough of my talk right now.
All right. Thanks, Bill. So I'll just piggyback off some of your questions to ask some of the questions I had. So to be clear, the 4.5 feet is the level of protection expected with no action taken. Is that correct?
What do you mean by no action? Do you mean no city forces, or what are you asking?
Yeah, just meaning if everyone left town and a flood came in at 5 feet, water would get in. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah, yes, that's correct.
Okay, so 4.5 feet is the no action needed safe level of flooding.
Yes.
Generally, there's some areas like Alex Haley Park are a little lower than 4.5 feet.
Okay, because that's really what I wanted to see, kind of where are our weakest points on this resiliency plan? Because I don't know, I read like Taleb, right, where he talks about things that get stronger when force is applied to them. So like, example of like your muscles, right? You have to use your muscles for them to get stronger. So they're anti-fragile, I think is the famous term he uses. So when I think of resiliency, I think in those terms. So where is our weakest point of protection?
Alex,
I'm not sure what we understand what you mean by weak. What you talked about earlier about only being protected to an elevation 4.5 storm without human intervention is correct.
Okay, so that's it, right? There's nowhere that would be less than. Right. The storm wouldn't get past at 4.5 feet.
2.5 Alex.
So you're saying, what is the finished grades 2.5 at Alex Haley?
Let's say we're talking about the areas behind the line of defense.
Right.
Right? So we would be protected from an elevation 4.5 storm when all of the work downtown, of which this is only a portion, is completed.
Of course. So that's right.
So our biggest our largest vulnerabilities is the work you don't see here.
Right, outside the scope of this project.
Correct.
But so focusing my comments on today's scope. So where it's Alex Haley. So I was looking at the plans, right? Where it says 2.5 there, and that lines up with John brought the big plans, but I'm looking at it on my iPad. I'm on page CG 101 of the grading plan. And that's what it says, right? 2.5 feet. And then the elevation behind that is even a little bit lower. So in my expectation is if there was some sort of human failure in the process of adding the deployable barrier, the water would be able to rush in there and go around the protection.
So that's not accurate. The yellow line will be floating barriers. And Derek may not have been super clear about that. The only areas of this plan that require human intervention are the orange and the blue.
Okay, so you're saying the yellow at the Alex Hazley Plaza where it says 2.5 feet, there's 5.5 feet of pop-up barriers that are
Correct.
They're passive.
Yes.
They're passive.
Yes. With one small caveat, I think there are some gaps where we need to get pedestrians through that we haven't found a technical solution we're super thrilled with yet. So for maybe a 4 or 5 foot section, we are still considering a manually installed barrier, and that's along Dock Street.
So I'm guessing that's at
We actually have some more details on this. Let's flip back to those slides if we want to talk resilience a little bit more.
Slides towards the end.
Yeah, they're way towards the back. Here.
Ooh, great, yeah, let's look at this.
Right. So if you see those red areas where it says manual flood barrier, we may be able to get an automatic device in there, but there's some technical challenges at those locations.
So the side on Compromise Street, that makes sense to me, but that's already built up, right? That you have the previous bulkhead that was already there, and it looks like that's
Yes, so we're going to use a manual or a deployable system to get to elevation 8 on Compromise.
on top of the current. Would it be behind the current bulkhead or on top of the bulkhead?
On top.
On top of it. Okay. Do you have images of that particular system?
I believe there's some images in here. The last one. What happened to the slide that had the photos in it?
We do, but it looks like it was accidentally deleted from this.
Okay, yeah.
All right, because
That's okay.
we've had them every time we've presented.
Were they similar to the ones that the mayor was testing on by the Fleet Reserve, or is that different?
Those were, I believe, in that photo, weren't those were really temporary. These are not.
No,
Ours are.
So we lost the flood barrier slide?
Yeah.
I've got it on my computer. We'll plug in.
Okay. None of.
Short answer is no, they're not similar to
Okay,
what
well, that's what I was concerned about, because those seem like they're effective to a point, but probably not to 5 feet with
correct
very minimal base. They didn't seem like the.
I think what we found in going through this is that there wasn't just one solution, just because of all the differences in turns and different elevations and other features that we had to marry a bunch of different solutions together into a system. So that's why we have some places, we do have permanent walls to elevation 8. I mean, that's sort of easy, but we also have float ups, flip ups, and then manually deployed. So it's an entire system. And again, we mentioned that a couple of times, we're trying to minimize active people going out, city forces going out and deploying something. Probably, I don't know the exact numbers, but probably 80 to 90% of this is passive. It'll just occur as the flood levels rise, and then there's some portions that the city will have to actually go and deploy something.
Great, that makes sense to me. And then what I'm understanding then at the Alex Haley Plaza, potentially that if it was where it's 2.5 elevation, but then the bulkhead's right there on Compromise Street, that those would be connected and the pop-up would be connected to that, integrated into the current bulkhead.
Correct, yep.
Okay.
Pop-ups would be behind the bulkhead. I think on that Alex Haley, we're actually elevating the bulkhead there by about a foot, just slightly.
Which one should we look at for the Alex Haley Plaza?
The deployed flip up, I guess. I guess it's the third column. The image at the top shows the float. I'm sorry, the deployed float up. The float up in the ground, so you don't really see it. You see the top of it. And then the bottom, column 3, the bottom is as it floats up out of the ground is deployed.
Okay, so that label is inaccurate. That's a float up instead of a flip up.
Correct, it's a float up.
Great. And then what would go on top of the bulkhead?
That's the column on the right.
The far right.
When there's no flooding event, there would be nothing there. And then this is what the city would deploy and bring these post and plank barrier system. So there may be something on the receiving, something on the ground that would receive that system, but there are some manufacturers that don't have anything. All the posts and everything is all just deployable.
Okay. And that's primarily targeted for the bulkhead on Compromise Street?
Bulkhead uncompromised, and a couple areas where we have stairwells. The
stairwells.
And the entrance to the promenade right there off of Randall Street. And that's
Okay.
because grades are changing, and it
Sure.
makes the float up much more of a challenge when you have changes in grades. We really need a sort of a level surface for some of the systems to work properly.
So kind of to summarize here, at 2.5 feet, we would need the passive barriers to engage, and at 4.5 feet, we would need the manual barriers to be deployed.
That's correct. Yep. It's good. That's a pretty good estimate, yes.
Okay. All right. Will, you look like you have a question.
If you don't mind me asking, I'm having trouble trying to think of how the questions and your direction of questioning relates to the responsibilities of the HPC. So if you could clarify that, I'd appreciate it.
Because my house is at elevation 7.
Okay, that's very fair.
So
Very
I'm
understandable.
very invested in this project. And I really want it to work at elevation 8. Because if it gets to elevation 8, I am very dissatisfied. Or if the flooding reaches elevation 8, it would reach my house, and I would have a significant amount of damage to what I consider a very important structure.
Well, I do too.
Thank you.
Thank you, though. I really was having trouble thinking of our guidelines and how it related to the specificity of your questions.
Yes.
But now it makes sense.
I'm very invested in this elevation.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time on pages CG 101 and CG 102 as well.
If I owned your house, I'd be watching those real carefully also.
Right. So, yeah, Leslie.
So, there are pumps, correct? And when those pumps are deployed, say when water comes in, I keep forgetting. So, when the pumps are deployed, how fast do the pumps, push the water back out?
Okay, so let's be clear. The pumps are not for when water comes in, because we're preventing the flood. So it's not going to be the tidal water that's coming in. We can't design pumps. I mean, you can, but that's just crazy amounts. The pump is for the rainfall that occurs behind the flood walls and then can't get out because the flood's a barrier sort of in both directions. So we don't have a large rainfall event, and that water is in a pool and has to go somewhere. So you really have to pump it out. That's what the pumps are for.
Okay.
Comes out of the drainage.
Yeah, so the drainage collection system, it's like the parking lot area. I mean, if you have a tidal event and it's raining hard in the parking area, that water can't naturally flow out.
Yeah.
At some point, you have to pump it out,
So
especially your larger events.
In a area that has really challenged stormwater drainage, are there going to be a lot of renovations made to the existing stormwater system?
Yeah, Derek, I'll take that one.
Go ahead.
The answer is yes. We're doing quite a bit to improve the stormwater drainage. So it'll work much better than it does today.
Okay.
Is there like a technical standard you're trying to meet, like inches per hour of rainfall that can be removed from that area? I mean, I am there, I'm at 7, but if I'm one of our businesses on Dock Street that floods at a much lower elevation, that like if there were a failure, and I mean, we're talking about climate change, the potential for storms that aren't currently considered.
I'll put it this way. We've run some modeling, and what it would take to flood to elevation 3 due to rainwater would be an event that would happen once at no more than every 2 or 3 millennia. So we're talking about the 3, 4, 5,000 year storm.
Wow.
And is that just because the catchment area that drains to City Dock is relatively small? Is that kind of the
correct? Right. So to make pumps and the wet wells that hold the pumps much smaller wouldn't really save us a lot of money. So we went ahead and over-designed them a bit, and there will be 3 of those. With some redundancy, and then the odds I just quoted you will actually change dramatically towards the end of the century, but that's well beyond the life of this project. So once we get into the 2070s, 2080s, an event that might happen only, you would expect to happen every 2,000 years might be something that would happen every 50 years due to sea level rise. It's a little bit of a probability problem because 2 really bad things happen to us at the exact same moment. And when I mean the moment, I'm talking 30 to 45 minutes. Okay. We have to have a really high tide and a crazy intense storm. That's what it would take to overwhelm our pumps.
And so where does the outfall go?
There are going to be something like 6 outfalls here total.
Okay.
Some mechanical and some gravity outfalls. I didn't know we were going to have so many engineering questions tonight. I thought this was all going to be about the appearance.
Presently in some locations, what's happening is that rainwater is being pushed in through the Chesapeake and up through the stormwater drains.
Yes.
And so it's
all of those will be closed.
Okay.
Water will be able to flow out, but it will go through a device called a check valve, which means water can go out, it cannot come back in.
Okay. Complicated. Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead, Bill.
Where are these pumps located? Are they inside a false building or underground or?
Those are going to be in pump stations.
Are there?
So we'll be below ground.
They're below ground. So
Yes.
It's in a vault. Okay.
Yes.
Was there one located in the center of the park, pump station?
No, there's one in the
Must have
parking
been an
lot.
old picture that I saw.
There's one in the parking lot.
One in the parking lot, okay.
And I do have one operational question, and I apologize, but when the pop-ups are coming up, they don't suddenly just pop up. They're slowly rising. So when did they become a hip trip hazard, and is there some way that you are signaling people to be careful?
Well, some of it's just a basic common sense. We're not expecting when we're having like a major tidal event that we have huge crowds and people, running around on it. It's not a place where people want to be when this is flooding. Maybe, and it could be cordoned off completely when these types of events happen. So
I understand.
But no, you make a great point. They're at Alex Haley, where the elevation is only 2.5. Those barriers are going to come up quite often. And I think if you bring back if I plug my other computer back in, one of the images does show a red stripe on the ground. Mm-hmm. So it creates a visual distinction there. And I think we'll be able to take care of that.
Okay,
we could paint the inside of the thing so when it comes up, it's quite bright.
I just didn't know if you had some magic way, because from experience on my side is that people will find a way to get around our protections.
So
we saw that at a recent site visit, didn't we, Travis?
You might have seen me. I go out there every time there's flooding. So, Will?
I'd like to kind of ask a different question that it maybe is too broad. Because what you're presenting to us tonight is the design, the landscaping and elevation changes, basically, the appearance of the city dock area. Is there anything that we should know that is hidden below the ground that might come above ground at some point in your planning? basically, isn't this what we need to be looking at and talking about? I mean, these are very pertinent questions that some of the commissioners have asked, but they have to do with things that don't seem to me to be part of our purview. But if something were to be placed there because it needed to be, like, you know, a pump or something, is there something that you can tell me and us now that we might need to be thinking about later, or is this it?
Yeah, I would say that, and I referred to this a few minutes ago, is we're now gathering a lot of final engineering information and submittals regarding equipment, and anything that can be below ground is being put below ground. And, you know, the pumps, there will be an outline you'll see on the ground, but it does not come above the ground. It is below ground. There will be some equipment that we're going to have to coordinate above ground, just like there is out at City Dock today. And we'll be coming back to you with that as we have final details for it.
That was going to be my follow-up question. If you come in for a formal approval, you'll have to document all of that for us.
Yeah, and what we've hoped to do is that if we can get this geometry approved in the two-dimensional way in which the Planning Commission has approved it, then we can finalize where last pieces may go to fit within the overall design and be as comprehensive as possible, so that these things don't just pop up in places where none of us want them.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and we, in order to go forward, we need the site plan and the resiliency approval or review and recommendation from the HPC. And then as the other has evolved and is designed at construction level, we'll bring all of that back.
Thank you.
Brendan, do you have some comments?
Yeah, I have a completely different line of questioning. One of the most fascinating things about this process has been reading through the cultural landscape report that was prepared very early on in this process. And one of the things that's in that report is sort of a series of studies of the Sanborn fire insurance maps that are showing various industrial iterations of what was done on the dock of steam mills, very heavily industrial areas, oyster packing plants. I don't know, Eileen mentioned some of these uses for the dock. It's been it has gone with the economy of the times for the last 250 years. Was there any thought in the design process? I know that you're working on figuring out, sort of in terms of signage and markers, how to commemorate some of the other uses of this dock. Was there any thought during the design process to actually including as architectural elements any of the outlines of what used to be there, even if it's just underlaid in brick? So I'm looking at the 1897 map. And right down on the end was an oyster packing house, the Colored Union's Packing Company's oyster packing house. In the same map, the Burtis House has a boat shed and a boat landing. So these are things that are relevant to the history of the city, and you may even uncover traces of them left over as you dig underneath the pavement. And so I guess the question is there any way architecturally to reflect any of that, even just a hint, even just an outline in brick, so that we can sort of see all of the different things that the city dock has been and understand the different industrial uses of it?
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, the trellis that we have located here is meant to suggest the location of some of the buildings from the original Sanborn maps. And the Chesapeake Oyster Company that ran perpendicular to Eagle Alley is that is a hint of that structure that comes across there. Having said that, we all want open views, of course, here. So showing something in the pavement is something that we've considered. I don't think there's anything now currently that we're doing that has it in the pavement, but that trellis element is meant to suggest that Chesapeake Oyster.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that you erect a steam mill there. that would, we might have issues with view shed. But it would be interesting to actually see whether whether that could be part of the architecture of it and not just the signage.
We're in speaking with the legacy. We're meeting with the legacy committee often, and we're one of the things we've talked about. Will there be some sort of interpretive panels that might be vertical, that are, that are placed in the park, that might give a hint of what the history was. And talking about the industriousness, that's one of the big things that came out of it, is that we should celebrate that this was an industrial dock, and let people know what it was. We're not there yet with the interpretive elements. I mean, we've talked about it with the fountain, with the trellis, as I said, with some of the walls, but we're still in the early stages of that with the interpretive elements. But that's a great idea, and we even have talked about a timeline of that, because there's such a long promenade, we could do a long history of in a timeline that might be able to tell you what happened at specific dates along the way until now.
Right. Yeah.
If you were able to send us an image or a reference, I would love that, because as Scott and Eileen were saying, we really are still at the point where we're trying to gather, and then within that gathering, then we can start to bring forth visualizations of some of the ideas that people have, and then we can have other meetings where it's, well, what does this reflect what you are looking for? Does this reflect what you're looking for? Is this too much? Is this too little? Because again, since we have so much space where we can incorporate ideas such as what you just mentioned, I think that would be very valuable for us to really see, like what you see, as much as possible as being a possibility.
So first of all, I would hate to suggest that right now that we focus on two random things that I pulled out of this. The maps that we're talking about, these are there's a fire insurance company, the Sanborn Fire Insurance Company.
Because if you gave me the reference, I can go to the archives.
There's a list. It looks like they came from the Library of Congress. Looks like they've got the physical copies there. And the only ones that I've seen are the smaller ones that are reproduced in this report, but there've got to be larger ones that might, I guess the real question at this point is, I think there's another discussion at another time to be had about signage and a timeline and interpretations. And that's not what we're here today. I guess the question right now is there a way to think about hints in the architecture itself of buildings that we're likely going to find when we start digging?
Yes.
If it would help, I believe I have all the Sanborn maps in digital form. If you give me a contact, I will send you everything I have.
I would just probably, I don't know, but probably if you gave me the reference, like what the map number is, it might be an SC something number, then we probably have it at the archives, is what I would think. So,
I'm sure you do have them at the archives. It's just, I don't know the SDs I have.
So
I have
We would take you up on
that. There are some at the archives, but you can go online for the Library of Congress and see virtually all of them, going back to 1885.
But if you have them, that would make our task a little bit easier. Thank you.
I do have a fair number of them. I won't say I have all of them, but I do have a fair number. I have some of the color ones as well.
It's just what I'm saying is that I want to know what you specifically are thinking about. Because if I go back and look at some Sanborn maps, there may be some that I think are really great, but you have a vision in your mind, and so that's what I'm doing. And not to say that your vision is the one that we use, but that's what we're trying to get, everybody's ideas and everybody's thoughts. And that's what we consider.
I would say for me, at least, it's more of a question than a vision right now. So I guess it would be a question of what would the process look like through which we, both architecturally and culturally, look through these maps and figure out what are some footprints that might be relevant, or is that something worth doing at all? I think that's the question.
And so there are two aspects. The one aspect that Chris chairs is with the cultural legacy group. We have talked to them about bringing this kind of material forward, but we also could certainly bring material back to the HPC as well.
Great, thank you for that. Other commissioners? I've still got a long list, so I can keep going, but on the barriers, I was curious about the maintenance of them and how they are, what their useful life is, and how they're checked for how are they checked to make sure they're still in good operating condition?
It varies by manufacturer. They have a pretty robust service life. Burr and I and Matt, another city employee, we went and visited a barrier that my team installed in Baltimore in 2017. It's the Sagamore Pendry Hotel. That barrier looks the same way it did the day we installed it. It's doing great. Generally, they require maintenance on the 6-month schedule, and that's opening it up, reviewing the condition. There's gaskets and seals that are rubber that can wear out over time, eventually be replaced pretty easily. That's effectively it. The basins that fill up with water that eventually float these barriers up usually need to be cleaned out, especially after a storm event. We get the flotsam and jetsam that comes in with the tide, fills up these basins sometimes, right? So there's cleaning, there's maintenance. There's companies that'll do it automatically for you, put it on a plan. The city's working through, doing it themselves versus what it would cost to just go on a maintenance plan. We're visiting another product tomorrow, another manufacturer's installed product in Alexandria to review the maintenance considerations for that product. Of course, like I mentioned, they're different among the different manufacturers. And I know that between WSP, the entire design team, and Burr and the city personnel that are involved in this project have taken a very careful consideration of the maintenance that goes along with each of these products as they hone in on a selection for which one is right for this project. So we're very close to the end of that process. You can see the plan is baked with the scheme. Where does the vertical barrier make sense? Where does the flip-up barrier make sense? Then there's nuances among the manufacturers that make those different products. So that's what we're reviewing right now and coming to a decision on. Did I capture that correctly, Burr? It's about where we are.
Thank you. And what's the useful life? What's an example of the useful life of some of these products before they need a total rebuild?
So that's a good question that we can and should pose to the manufacturers. Thinking about it, the materials range from either concrete housing to powder coated steel housing to stainless steel housing. All of these things are very robust and meant to last a very long time. Really, those rubber gaskets and seals that I talked about, because of UV damage and the nature of the barrier operating up and down through the years, that's really the only part or piece that you would be expected to run into a replacement. I'm going to speculate maybe every 10 years or so, but I truly can't imagine the materials, like I said, the powder-coated steel and things that these barriers are made out of, not outlasting the service life of the substrate that they're built into.
Thank you. And then along with that, you mentioned kind of the materials. It sounds like they would generally comply with our guidelines of being, if they're concrete, they have to be concrete, but the powder-coated metal and stainless steel perhaps as well, but they're going to be relatively low visibility, right? Because these are going to be flush with the ground.
Right. And in as an additional feature, some of them have the capability of running the pavers. I'm sure Scott's anxious to talk about the paver, samples and colors that we brought here tonight. You can run those pavers right over the top of these barriers and further blend them into the finished hardscape of the promenade or wherever each barrier resides. The barrier that we visited last week, the entire team walked right over it, and I said, "Did you just realize you walked over this barrier?" And most of them hadn't. They walked right over it.
And you said that was in front of the Pendry Hotel?
It's on the pool deck side of the Pendry Hotel.
I may have to check that out when I'm in Baltimore.
Sure thing. We would be happy to arrange a visit. We're still friendly with the staff there. Built that hotel in 2017, I want to say. So yeah, absolutely would be happy to facilitate a visit. We can open that for anybody who may be interested in seeing that barrier operate and understand how it works.
Awesome, thank you. Next question I was going to have or comment for the presentation. I appreciated the pictures, like the before and after pictures. I would like to see more before and after pictures from different angles, specifically more from the water. I'm thinking one from Spa Creek where you can see the State House and how, you know, if you're far enough out that you can see the State House, how far out will you have to be before that view is materially changed? And then on the opposite side, coming up Main Street, I'd like to see another before and after from higher up Main Street. Because frankly, the vision, the view shed from the circle is kind of mediocre today, but it improves very quickly the higher you get up Main Street. It's kind of sad, in my opinion, that Main Street goes uphill because you only see the great view in your rearview mirror, and then when you're
It used to go the other way.
When it went the other way, you would be coming down Main Street. I wasn't here when it did.
Me either.
But you would have been able to see an amazing view. And I guess the few times during COVID that the entire Main Street was shut down for pedestrians, I particularly enjoyed that experience of having that view from higher up. And so seeing what that impact is there, like I say. Great.
Let's do that.
We'll see.
You missed them.
We have a view here from the water which depicts the State House.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my question is like, approximately how far out would you have to be in the water before you could see the State House over the trees?
Exactly. Yeah, that was my question too.
Right,
Because
I mean,
you see these series of landmarks from the water. You see the State House, you see the cupola of the Naval Academy, you see the spire from St. Mary's. And so how much does this new construction affect that?
Okay, yeah, so my question has to do with the design of this part here with the trees, the vegetation, the types of vegetation that will be used, especially when you think about a historic area. You don't want vegetation that will be negatively impacted when it comes to flooding and those that won't thrive well when the water rises up and can potentially erode and damage, and then you have a bunch of dead trees and grass, and that's not aesthetically pleasing. So I'm curious about the design as it pertains to that.
So there are some native trees that take periodic inundation, like a red maple, for example, a river birch, things like that. So most of these trees are behind the flood walls, but the ones that are in Susan Campbell Park, they will flood. And then the ones along the promenade, the wall now is behind those will also get periodically inundated. But the species we're using are all take that. You know, they're riverside trees that do well, you know, like sycamores and things like that do well with wet feet.
Okay. And what is the approximate height? Because that might address some of my fellow commissioners' concern, or, you know, its most mature height.
You know, when you...
Because that would help. If you're able to show that, then that would address some concern they have about the ability
I mean, mature trees, you know, get 60 feet tall. I mean, 50, 60 feet tall. It really...
and we're showing mature.
Yeah, we're showing pretty mature. These are shown at 30 something probably. When you look at the light poles, 12, yeah, they're probably more than double that. Yes, sir.
Since we're talking about the trees and their effect on view sheds, one thing that would help me understand what's actually being proposed is if you could at some point delineate the ones that are in the movable containers. And just so that would be another thing that would have an effect on my final thoughts about the plan. Because if you can move it, it's like many things that if they're temporary or removable, we have more latitude in accepting them.
So anything we put in those smaller planters, and they're big planters, they're going to be probably 5 to 6 foot diameter, it's got to be a small tree. it's got to be something like a dogwood or a redbud or something like that. They're not going to be shade trees. They provide shade when they're lifted up in these pots. So they're great. You would never put them on a street, for example, but when you have them in a pot that's 4 feet high and then they have their canopy, they'll provide shade. But they're small trees, so we're not going to do any large shade trees in those.
Good.
So
That helps me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if I could add that there was a great amount of discussion during the actual development of the City Dock Action Plan, and then during the like I said, this past year, over 80 meetings, but also a few hundred meetings if you take them all together, of the issue of the need for shade and the environmental issue of this being really a hot spot versus the views. One of the things that this team has done, and I'm showing this slide looking back from the water at Susan Campbell Park, they've taken out those mature trees that are in the middle of Susan Campbell Park to open up the view shed, and the trees for shade have been placed along the side. Do you want to show any others? Or is this just one?
Well, looking
Yeah, thank you for
back,
pointing
too,
that out.
like looking-
I appreciate that
like
you've created
looking
that
back.
view shed on the Winter, on Dock Street, and from the pergola space as well. I'm personally not worried about the trees. I'm comfortable with I'm in favor generally of the idea that the trees create a better environment for people to be there. And I'm willing to sacrifice some of the view sheds. I did have like a pretty basic question. Are these all, and I'm trying to remember back to 4th grade, deciduous trees versus coniferous or evergreens?
Yeah, they're all deciduous.
Okay, so they will have, the winter views will be quite
Different.
starkly different than what
That's right.
you're presenting even, right?
Right.
Any other questions on the trees? I did have a question on the grass park. I had 2 questions there. One is so for example, today the Irish Hoolie, I think it's called, was set up there with that tent. I suspect people if Hoolie's the right word and I'm saying it right, are going to be actively using the grass and treating it, and if there's unfortunate timing of weather for a boat show, or what are the contingencies for the grass park? Is there how that worries me, that the condition of the grass itself.
Right. Think concert in Camden Yards. They bring out Bruce Springsteen in Camden Yards, and they let everybody on the field. They cover that field and protect it. That's really an operational thing that the city is aware of. So if you're having a festival like today, and there's going to be 3,000 people under that tent, they sell these raised plastic platforms that they lie down, and they protect the grass. If the boat show is a different story, because it's too long. It's we keep them for 2 weeks. I've done a lot of research on this. I've called turfgrass people at the University of Maryland. We're going to use a really hardy, athletic type grass that's meant for fields and will drain quickly. The spec will drain quickly, like the mall in Washington. But you can't cover grass for 2 weeks without air, or it'll yellow and potentially die. So the city is aware of that. We know that that's an operational thing that they may have to resod on. But I would only say it's really the boat show, because that's the one that goes 2 full weeks with the grass completely covered. But the idea is it is completely covered.
Thank you, and I'm preempting Will's question that this is the landscape plan, that this is part of our purview with the landscaping of this area.
I'm not sure that, I never understood grass to be part of our purview, but that may be my limitation.
I did want to ask about the samples you brought, if you can can those be like passed around perhaps to see what
Sure.
we're looking at? Are they?
Do that.
I was particularly interested in the concrete pavers and see what my fellow commissioners thought about the concrete pavers in particular. The brick ones seem pretty straightforward. Is this the paver material, or is this the topper of the? So what am I looking at? Is this concrete paver?
Concrete unit paver.
Okay.
This is, I mean, a full size one would be 6 by 12 inches and 3 or 4 inches deep.
Okay.
So this is just a finish color sample.
Okay.
And I should say that the concrete pavers now,
And this is a sample of like gray granite that we're proposing.
we are using, if you want to see some really great looking examples of this particular paver is used at a project, Chevy Chase Lakes. It looks, for all intents, like a granite paver. It's the quality. It's not your Home Depot concrete paver. The quality is much better than you can see. It looks, for all intents and purposes, like a granite, and that's what we're proposing, and we just want that contrast.
Okay. Going back to the end of City Dock Park, the Susan Campbell Park area, there were 2 items I wanted to look at there. There was some sort of
Susan Campbell.
The UNESCO World Heritage item.
Yeah.
Are there any details? Is there any imagery of what that might be? Is that something? Is that like a vertical sculpture, or is that something that's flat on the ground, or what are we anticipating for that?
There is an image of it that was, I guess it's been shown twice, but we don't have it with us. It's a plaque at this point, a plaque that's on a pole. I don't remember what the elevation of it would be, but I'm trying to think of this.
Generally, is it like just a couple feet off the ground?
It's like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a wide, flat with edges, and so the when I last saw it, there was a facsimile of it. There was one in Londontown, and then also one to be at the City Dock. There will probably be another one on November 1st of this year, because annually we celebrate this, with raised lettering. So, and I don't know if that's specifically for those who may be sight impaired, but also there's raised lettering, such as many historic plaques conform to that. So that's what it would be. And I could send one. I could certainly have it shared within the next presentation we have.
That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be helpful.
How tall?
I don't know. I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure.
I mean, is it like 20 feet tall, or?
No, I'd say it's I would think it's 6 feet. It's like regular human size.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And this is the location. It will be back slightly off this prominent point.
Okay. Also in that image, there's the chairs. Are those movable or permanent? And okay.
They're movable, but they're really heavy to move.
Well, as was going to be my next question, are any of these things on this screen going to be moved in nefarious ways?
Well, obviously, anything can happen. The benches are going to be fixed. I can say that most of the games are fixed. We purposely are keeping that movable furniture in that one area to be movable. I can tell you we've used some of this furniture in Rash Field, and none of it's wound up in the harbor. They've thrown a lot of rocks in the harbor. We've had decorative rocks. They pick those up, throw those in the water, but we haven't had much damage to the furniture. I mean, the furniture that the damage we've had are skateboarders on larger pieces.
Okay.
We really haven't had, and amazingly, the bistro chairs, people, I think when you have a level of horticulture in a park and a level of eyes around, people tend to take better care of things. And I think Annapolis is one of those places. And I think it's amazing. People respect that, it's their place. So if they see somebody doing something nefarious, they'll usually correct them. But not to say it can happen anywhere, right?
Any other thoughts on this page for my commissioners? I was curious particularly about the umbrella. We do have specific umbrella guidelines in the outdoor furniture guidelines that just wanted you guys to be aware of. Mostly that they're monochromatic. So I was curious if anybody had thoughts on those, if they're feasible or...
Looks good to me.
Everyone's comfortable with the images on the screen?
That umbrella, that's a metal construction.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where were those envisioned to go? The picnic tables?
So in that active...
In the active park area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, movable, but not easily, because the chairs are even attached to those. So that's one unit.
I was looking through the appendix of the design plans. I didn't see like the doggy trash bags stations. Are those going to be a thing?
That's one thing we haven't been requested, and I would be surprised you'd want this to be a dog park. So I would say...
I have opinions of that, but I do have...
They are, but we generally, what we do in... there's a couple of parks in Baltimore, we say, this is not a dog area, but if you want, we can easily put doggy bags in.
I know I'm in the minority but I prefer there to not have the dogs there. But I was just curious about that. And going along with that, there were no smoking signs in the appendix. Is that a thing that's being considered or not about smoking in these areas, potentially with you being a family-oriented park? That's a concern I have for my family.
It's interesting.
We're going to have to check into our ability to do that with the laws being what they are, and you can smoke outside, and we're going to have to probably check into the enforceability of that, whether it is within our purview or even the city, anyone's general purview when it comes to outside, you know?
Yeah. Signs would be our concern, but
Well, I'm talking
not
about,
whether to smoke
yes,
or not.
what it says, whether we can say no smoking when we don't really contain or control one's ability to do that. So, yes, signs, but what the sign says is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and that's why I was just looking. That's why I was bringing up. That was in that section. They do have a pretty detailed appendix of what signs will and won't be there, and so I was hoping to see that.
And the city attorney is just nudging me about the far field with the smoking signs.
Yeah, we can't do that.
Can you repeat that?
You're not gonna.
I said the city attorney was just nudging me about the going a little far afield with the issue of the smoking, not the issue of signage, but the issue of smoking.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, because I was bringing it up because of the signage. I do have a question about the timeline of construction. Just is this project able to be started without the Burtis House area being approved and ready to go?
Absolutely. We have brought forward, let me get you, this entire area, what's before you is the city dock site plan and the resiliency. What will come at a separate time in the future will be, and you'll see where the Burtis House is, a design on a maritime welcome center at some point in the future, along with the Burtis House. But that is not something that's ready to bring forward, or it's been contemplated at this point in time.
Thank you. And then specifically about over on that area, the street between the Burtis House and what's now the Latitude Restaurant is in the scope of this. I know there were suggestions at some point about elevating Prince George Street. Does that mean this is off the table if we're committing to a plan for that area, the access for the emergency vehicles between Burtis House and the Latitude Restaurant?
Well, that area will be available. Of course, it's really not a street at the moment. It's really a parking lot, but that will be emergency vehicle access.
Right.
And it will be paved. We see it as being brick pavers as shown. The park just above the Burtis House there will be elevated to some extent to Prince George Street Park that's there, and we'll have more details to share on that soon.
Yeah, and I do have more. I'm curious about how the connection there between Dock Street that's in at the waterfront that's in the purview, or at least of the design here, and then an earlier vision or an earlier slide that talked about in front of Burtis House being an 8-foot barrier wall or elevation, and the Dock Street, how that's going to tie into the Dock Street one earth there that is not really anywhere close to that 8 foot of physical elevation.
So, that multicolored line that goes all the way around the plan, of course, the top of that when deployed will be 8 feet. And the majority of that multicolored line, which is red, I believe, is a fixed element, which is the park or the side of a building. And I think it's a good way to think about it. If we can just get to that plan. So everywhere where it's red, dark pink, red, whatever that color is, it's either the side of a wall or it is an embankment or a retaining wall, if you will, at the park. And so that's the beauty of it, is that's a fixed structure that doesn't feel like a wall at all because it cascades back, it's made of steps or whatever. Where the small yellow openings are, of course, is where we'll have to fill in where the steps are. But so at the Burtis House and the Maritime Welcome Center, it'll be incorporated into a wall there.
So the
details of
foundation will be the seawall.
The building of foundation will be, yeah. And it works out well because the building has to begin construction at elevation 7 is the lowest floor you can have on a new structure in Annapolis. So.
Okay. That answers that concern. And then the last thing I had, and I was going to give John a opportunity to ask some questions if he needed to. The currently in the parking lot near the electrical building that's close to Susan Campbell Park, there's quite a few trash bins there. I presume the electrical part of that building will be moved underground, is what I'm hearing. But that those trash bins and for trash collection, is there a target location for that?
We're actually looking at that right now. The trash bins will be moved. We're looking at moving them into the parking lot below the whole park. So in the remaining piece of the parking lot, we're looking at taking a parking space there and placing them there, but it hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay. Yeah, Brendan.
So this is going to sound like a specific question, but I'm only asking because you've done such thoughtful work on imagining very specifically what kinds of chairs we're going to have, what kinds of foosball tables we're going to have. And I'm wondering, you've got a whole line of yachts that are going to be tied up there. Was there any historical research done on firms from this city that built marine hardware? Is there a way to find a kind of cleat that is specific to here that was made by Williamson Plath? Or is there a way to take something from the Trumpy Yacht Yard or something from the America, which was in, a shed across the harbor, or a Williamson Plath sundial, or something that is a nod to also not just the canning and industrial heritage of the dock, but the marine construction heritage of and boat building heritage of the city? Is there a way to think about including any of those design elements either on the dock or in the park itself?
That's a great idea. Can you join the legacy committee with us? We could really use you. That's a great idea. We'll look into that.
I'm not letting him go. He just started today.
We're trying to be open to all that because we
Yeah.
agree. I mean, there's a lot of rich stuff there to mine from.
Then again, it seems like a detail now. I'm asking because it's possible that some of these could become architectural elements and part of the plan.
All right. The pergola. Any thoughts from the commissioners on the pergola?
Great idea.
Great. The swings in Donner Park. Anybody have any opinions on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
You just see the end of it.
I appreciated your slide on the historic materials. It seems like you're aware of our expectations for the types of materials and that we're using for these items, and we saw that, so I appreciate that. Another comment I had, which is probably not relevant for us, but in the parking lot on Dock Street, where the gore point is today, is commonly used for like the police to park there conveniently in front of the establishments that close at 2 a.m. and just kind of have a presence there. And then also I see like motorcyclists, like groups of motorcyclists will park there often. But now it's kind of a landscaping feature. So I don't know if that's going to be, how that's going to be. I don't really have an action for you guys out of that, but I just wanted you guys to be aware because I see that every day, that people are using that space, but it's being turned into landscaping here, which is probably better overall, but it's a loss of function that's happening, just to be aware.
There is still some parking there, but there will be competition for that parking because it's a significantly smaller amount, because the park itself, over an acre, takes up what now is parking. So the area from Craig Street West will be parking, but it'll just be a smaller number of spaces.
And what I'm referring to is a space that right now is not parking. It's marked off, and like delivery trucks park there in the morning. I know they have the sign about parking. It's like is supposed to be for delivery trucks in the morning.
Up in there.
And nobody listens to that, but there's not really much action
I think we
to come out of this comment.
Trade-offs.
You're getting pretty close to the end of my comments. I just want to reiterate that I hope I'm not coming off as adversarial. Like, this is a project I really want to see happen. I want to see it happen so badly that I want the details to be right. Any other questions from the commissioners before we give John a chance to see if he has anything to say, to add, to question or anything? Go ahead, John, if you have anything.
Well, there are two things that weren't really shown tonight, and I thought it would be worthwhile, as long as we're here, if you could show the expansion of the sidewalk at Dock Street, and also talk about the, and I'm assuming that this is still going to happen, the removal of the poles there and the undergrounding of the utilities. It just wasn't mentioned. And then the second one is Donner Park.
I agree. The expansion, the narrowing of the crosswalk at Dock Street that I use twice a day, 4 times a day with my elementary school age child, I'm very happy about that.
Agreed.
We have it, give us just a
It's an Apple. It doesn't usually have
Don't let Eileen have
HDMI.
that. Take that away from her.
It's a Mac. I have an adapter in my car.
So I will bring this up and pass it around.
Told you.
So to be clear, we're talking about the widening of the sidewalk in front of the Dock Street businesses.
Right, below Craig, between Craig and Randall.
Between Craig and Randall.
Widening the sidewalk. And It is? You could? That's weird.
And then undergrounding the power poles,
Yes.
that power lines in that area, those are two fantastic improvements.
While Scott looks through there, I believe one of the exhibits in this slideshow shows that sidewalk widening.
And that was clear in your presentation.
What kind of slide are you looking for? What are we thinking?
One of the overhead plan views has the up, right there. Go back.
There it's widened, right?
Yeah.
We should have.
No, it's wider than that. So, you see it's actually, so this is widened, but it's actually wider right at the corner of Craig and that turn. We were able to do bus turn studies to see if the buses could make that turn, and we were able to extend that out about, what, five?
Can you hold that slide for a second? The one you have up there now.
Yeah.
I have a question that I seem to be the only person who ever asked it. That green space between the two white areas, that's the private lot that has the billboard on it, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah.
Has the city given any consideration to buying that, including it in this plan, and taking down that god-awful ugly billboard?
The owner has committed to removing the billboard, but has not given a date for doing so, is my understanding. But Eileen, the private lot with the billboard on it?
We would be glad to take direction from the request of the Historic Preservation Commission and ask what the timeline is, if the Historic Preservation Commission would like to direct us to find that information out.
That, I've lived here since 1979. It's been an eyesore since 1979. I believe that the owner of the property is an ardent preservationist, and I am mystified as to why it still remains, especially when we're investing all this time and millions of dollars to improve the city dock. My direction would be remove it as soon as possible. That's just me.
You might want to take some reasonable timeline in the spirit of congeniality, okay?
Removal by the time this project is completed.
That's too generous now.
I'll say tomorrow if that's what you want.
Can we agree to using it as a projection service for movie night until such time it is removed?
That's preferable to me than.
Yeah.
Are we sure this is not a historic billboard?
I don't give a damn if it is.
It's a historic cockroach.
Yes. Thank you. That is a good.
Maybe a historic billboard. Maybe it'd be an artifact.
I don't know that a billboard can't. When did billboards come out? I don't know that it's historic. It could,
That billboard's been there for 75 years, at least.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's within our limits of time, right?
I think it's outside the period of significance.
Oh, it is?
I think it is.
Oh, well,
So.
Right. It could go. Well, I think you need to put a please in there because they're.
Please?
Please, yes, please.
I don't
Would
think
it be
please has
possible?
never seemed to have any effect in the past.
You have to play nice in the
It might.
sandbox.
It might.
Please, I'm happy to say please.
Just practice it at home.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Could you please ask the applicants to explain exactly what they're doing with respect to the sidewalk, how wide the sidewalk will be, so we can get that on the record, what it is now, and also to explain Donner Park and the retention of the wall around Donner Park. You've seen Donner Park from different angles tonight, but you've not seen it from, say, Main Street or from the Circle, which is an important view to the Planning Commission, and they've conveyed that approval to you, and it'd be worthwhile if we can get that on the record too.
So the Donner Park currently, right at Compromise, has a low brick wall that is there to basically screen the parking lot. And we're pretty much going to keep that there. We do have to breach it we have to cut a break in it for access so they can use the park during events, so that a truck can pull in there. So we need to break it for about 10 feet wide, but it'll have that break, and then the lawn will come out to it. But the wall is basically going to stay there. We have a view of the wall, but we don't show the break in it. Oh, I didn't put this on. This is the presentation, isn't it? Oh, it's static. And then as far as the width of, it varies. It varies along the whole distance. It's not a consistent as, with the historic city, it's not clean. I can't say it's this width because it really, I think the narrowest now is 12 feet. Does that sound right?
It's even narrower than that. Currently?
No, the proposed will be 12 feet. And currently it's down to
6,
8.
Yeah.
It's
better.
I'm confused what you're saying.
So currently it varies. The width, the distance from the building to the curb, the sidewalk width.
Sure.
Varies along that entire stretch.
Yeah.
I'm saying that the proposed is the narrowest it would be is 12 feet. It currently goes down to about 6 or 8. And that's really at the tip of Craig, at the corner of Craig and the parking lot.
Okay, so you're referring to the sidewalk in front of the businesses
That's
on
right.
Dock Street.
Yeah.
Great. Okay.
And that's where the poles are that are being undergrounded.
Great. And this is the imagery of the wall on Compromise Street.
That's right.
The barrier between the Donner Park and Compromise Street.
Right. So just imagine there's going to be a 10-foot break in that wall.
And that wall is going to be basically the same elevation it is today? Or will it be the exact same wall today? I mean, it's not a flood barrier wall, correct?
Right. Originally, that's right. The flood is now going along in front of on the bulkhead. So Donner does not flood.
And so that wall is primarily
it's just ornamental.
To keep children from running into Compromise Street.
Pretty much.
Okay. John, did you have any other items, or Chris, that you wanted to have brought up?
I don't. I think basically we've seen quite a bit. There are a lot of details that we haven't seen. There are things we haven't talked about, like demolition of the Harbor Master building, but that can all come in time subsequently with other presentations and other applications.
Thank you for bringing that up. I'm comfortable with saying, generally speaking, that the plan is feasible from my perspective. Do the other commissioners feel similarly? Do they have specific concerns that would make it not feasible in their purview?
I think it's entirely feasible.
Great. So I appreciate you, the whole team coming to present to us. It seems like you have a generally positive reception from the commission. We're excited for this project to happen. We want this to happen. As I said at the beginning, the resiliency is what, there's nothing to preserve if there's no resiliency. My personal residence included in that. So I'm very invested in this process, and we're excited to see it go forward.
Thank you so much for your comments, and we will follow up on your requests.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so that concludes that section of our meeting tonight. Our agenda has 2 administrative business items on there. The first is election of officers. Currently, we don't have a chairman, so we need to have an election for that. So if there's any nominations.
Can I ask a question first, procedural question?
Of course.
Do we have anything that we know is going to be on our administrative session agenda yet for later this month?
My understanding is that we do not have anything currently, but we could.
May I suggest that we hold over both of these matters until and become the subject of that next meeting, given the hour and the extensive, serious exchange we just had?
If I'm comfortable with that, if the other commissioners are comfortable with that. I don't see any issue with that, so.
Yeah, I think it would be better for all involved.
Okay. In that case.
Means I'm sleepy. I don't think so. I don't think so, because it's only our own agenda that we don't vote on our agenda. Yeah, it wasn't public.
In that case, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
There was a second? All right, all in favor? All right, thank you.
Thank you.